All right. And welcome to the Monday edition of Reality Check. It's the top of the Reality Check week here on the home of Black Talk Media, none other than WURD. It's 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. I'm your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check, Charles Ellison. You can catch me if you can on Twitter, twitter.com @Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check as well. It's twitter.com @Ellison Report. That's where you tag us, and hashtag Reality Check to start some of your digital conversation aligned with or along with your daily dose of public affairs, of politics, public policy. We deliver that here daily or near daily because we get Fridays off here on Reality Check. Need those Fridays off because actually we're still working on Fridays because then we're lining up things and getting you ready for the next week of Reality Check or the upcoming week of Reality Checks. There's a lot of work, a lot of intense scheduling of guests and trying to get a handle on all these various events and topics and issues. There's quite a bit going on, which makes these Reality Check days so busy. So active, but also so useful as well. Try to be as useful as we can possibly be to you here on the home of Black Talk Media, WURD. Welcome to the program. How are you all doing? Once again, you can go to twitter.com @Ellison Report. I'm watching that as we are broadcasting now, twitter.com. It's @Ellison Report. Also, we are live on Word TV, on Facebook Live. You can go to facebook.com/4word, facebook.com/4word. I hear Facebook is still there, still alive, and so still thriving despite all the trouble it's going through right now. Facebook.com/4word and youtube.com/onWURD as well. But there's plenty of space to leave your comments, leave your feedback, also leave some questions, some of your insights as well as we're talking with our guests and talking with folks who are calling in live by phone. In fact, the phone lines are now open while we wait on our guest at the top of this hour. That will be Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. He is scheduled to join us at the top of this 10 o'clock hour. 215-634-8065 in case you have a question for him. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We've got the clash, the intersection of some really serious conditions, some alarming conditions in Philadelphia. Homicides in Philadelphia have cracked through the 30% ceiling. They have cracked through 30%. What do I mean by that? Homicides now, to date, as of the last count, homicides in Philadelphia are now 31%. You heard that correctly. Homicides in Philadelphia are now 31% above where they were this time last year. That's where the homicide numbers stand at this point. And at the same time, we have rising heat that's continuing in Philly. Philly is under extreme heat advisories. That's ongoing. In fact, it's 88 degrees right now. And we haven't even hit noon yet, so it's 88 degrees right now. Humidity is about 48%. That's high, and we're expecting a high of 96 degrees in Philadelphia today. Joining us now is Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. Go to phila.gov/district attorney for more there, and also @PhilaDAO on social media. Or at @DA_Larry Krasner. He's well engaged on social media. He joins us here as he occasionally does on Reality Check this morning. Phone lines are open in case you have questions for him. DA, how are you doing, sir? Good morning.
I'm great. How are you doing?
All right, good. And thanks so much. We had you joining in for a live. You hung in there for a couple of hours. We had a live discussion that we did in conjunction with Black clergy of Philly and vicinity. We had you, Deputy Police Commissioner Marvin Singleton, and a number of other folks, advocates and also elected leaders who came on talking about violence in the city. We'll get to that in a few moments. I did want to ask you, you stated last week, and this has stirred some controversy nationally, but you placed in a statement last week that, and I'm quoting you, anyone including federal law enforcement who unlawfully assaults and kidnaps people will face criminal charges from the DA's office. And this is in response to federal agents being used in places like Portland and those clashes are ongoing as we speak. What did you mean by that? Are you receiving indications or reports that federal law enforcement agents are arriving or being deployed in Philly as we speak?
No, what we're receiving are threats from Donald Trump. He has specifically listed Philadelphia as being one of a few cities that he is describing as being out of control in terms of protest, which is not the case, has not been the case, arguably never been the case, but certainly for several weeks we have had mostly peaceful protest activity. Anybody who lives here knows you can walk down the street and there's not as much protest activity as there was several weeks ago. So he has specifically said that this is something he's considering doing, and he said it after we all saw what happened in Portland. And what happened in Portland is things like fracturing the skull of a protester with a supposed non-lethal round, and apparently without legal justification. We see people dragged off the street into rental vans by some sorts of federal agents or troops. We don't even know what agency they're from. We have no reason to think they're probable cause. We even see the mayor getting tear gas there. All that I said is something that should not bother any of us who believe in democracy, which is that federal officers, federal troops don't get to break the law. If you come here and you commit crimes under Pennsylvania law, there's going to be a consequence, and I don't care whether you're employed as law enforcement or you're not. Everybody has a consequence. People who are breaking into, stores in West Philly or Chestnut Street and coming out with their arms full of goods from inside of those stores are facing a consequence. And it's not going to be okay to kidnap people, to physically assault people, just because the president seems to think it's okay.
How would that work if you were to criminally charge federal law enforcement officers or federal agents? Can you sort of, I don't know, illustrate a scenario where that might happen? Do they get arrested on the spot? Do you get assist from Philly local law enforcement officers? I could see that getting really tense and potentially really dangerous very easily. But I don't know, how would that work exactly?
Well, there is, it could work several different ways, all right? So there is nothing unusual about a federal law enforcement officer getting arrested under state law. The law is crystal clear that can happen. There's a slight wrinkle, which is some of the time later the case will end up in federal court, but there's absolutely no question that local law enforcement, the chief prosecutor, can bring charges against federal law enforcement, whether it involves domestic violence, driving under the influence, or assaulting people in the street in uniform in a way that is a crime. As long as there's probable cause, you can bring charges. The way charges initiate in the DA's office in Philly most of the time is that the Philadelphia police will bring us a case. Here is Joe. Joe punched Mike at a bar, and Mike has lost a tooth, so it's an ag assault case, and they bring it to us. We look at it, and overwhelmingly we do bring charges, although not in every single case. That's usually how it happens, but there are also cases that are initiated with this office because we have our own detectives and we have sources of video and other information that don't necessarily require Philadelphia police to bring us anything. So if what you're wondering about is a scenario where Philadelphia police are kind of sympathetic to illegal activity by federal troops, and I know that our commissioner is not, so I'm not actually all that worried about that. But if that's the scenario that concerns you, that somehow local police believe there's a thin blue line and everybody's on that side of the line, that's not going to stop. It's not going to stop us. I have an obligation to uphold the Constitution and the laws. I have an obligation to seek justice, and we are not going to let Philadelphia turn into the streets of, streets run by Kim Jong-un. This is not a dictatorship. That is not how things are going to work in the cradle of liberty. That's not how it's going to work in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. People are going to be accountable, and I don't care if they have uniforms on or not.
Yeah, I was about to ask you how Philadelphia police feel about that, but you've had this conversation with the Philadelphia Police Commissioner. Have you had the conversation with other rank-and-file police? I don't know where she had a conversation or a gut check with other rank-and-file police about this, a gut check with the police union, who normally aligns itself politically, ideologically with the Trump administration. I wonder about how useful an ally the Philadelphia Police Department would be in a situation like this.
It's like anything else. We have to be very careful about stereotyping, and I'm not suggesting you are, but the current Philadelphia police force of 6,300 active members is extremely diverse. They are not all Trumpies. The leadership of the FOP, in many ways, really represents a retired generation. Very Republican, very conservative, essentially all white former police officers. That's not what this police department looks like now. There's a lot of great cops in Philly who really don't want anything to do with the kind of hate and division and the kind of authoritarian tactics that the Trump administration represents. The commissioner and the mayor have had their own separate press conference where they made clear that this is not what they want. I've made clear it's not what I want. And so I don't want to assume anything other than I assume that all three of us are united in being opposed to some kind of an illegal invasion of Philadelphia by federal troops. Let me also say this, though. We all know that this president has a lot more talk than he has action. A whole bunch of talk about how he's going to drag every immigrant out of the United States. But the fact is he never had the boots on the ground. He never had the legal authority. He just made a big commotion talking. And I think a lot of what's going on.
866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065 while we talk with Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. DA, do you hear me? All right, DA, do you hear me?
I do hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, that's all right. A little technical glitch there. You know, I did want to ask you also about, something I am going to ask a couple of members of Congress about this later on because this has been thrown up there. So you had like the mayor of Portland tear gassed and assaulted by federal agents. You've had members of Congress being protests, Black Lives Matter protests, and being assaulted, tear gassed by federal agents. Are we having a conversation? Are you having a conversation with other prosecutors, other folks in other cities about using or exploring the use of the 14th Amendment, the disqualification clause, or even federal law like 18 U.S. Code about the president completely violating the Constitution, attacking, using federal troops in a form of armed insurrection? I just feel like, okay, so arresting federal officers is one thing, but I'm wondering why people haven't explored that, haven't looked at how he's just openly and flagrantly violating the Constitution.
Well, I can tell you I am in regular discussion with a lot of the other progressive district attorneys around the country, and of course they represent many of the major jurisdictions. I mean, I've spoken to Eric Gonzalez, who's Brooklyn. I've spoken to Marilyn Mosby, my friend, who's Baltimore, been in communication one way and another with Kim Fox, who's Chicago. We're all very, interested about this, but this is the kind of stuff that Trump tends to do. There may be civil litigation around this going into court that tends to be pretty time-consuming. But for me, it's kind of simple. If you come here and break the law, there's going to be consequences. We can do those other things. Those other things are a yes and, but it's not an either or. We have to be willing. We have to be willing to support the Constitution of the United States, to support people's sacred right of free expression, and make no mistake, free speech avoids violence. That is one of its primary functions. The peaceful protest in the street avoids violence. If you send federal troops in to provoke, to agitate, to cause a reaction that may be violent, that's because you want violence. And this is a president who I believe wants violence at this time. He is losing an election. He is trying to divide. He's trying to have a racial division in this country that's even deeper than it already is. We know his tactics because they are very typical tactics for white supremacists, for fascist governments. It includes being incredibly unsympathetic to the press, incredibly unsympathetic to people who are just out there to make sure rights are observed. And I ain't putting up with it. It's that simple.
Yeah. We're talking with Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. Phones are open. Hold on one second, Mr. Krasner. We want to get a call from Joe out of South Philly, who's calling in for a reality check, our conversation with DA Larry Krasner. Joe, how are you doing? Can you hear us?
Good morning. How you feeling?
Good morning. All right.
How you doing, Mr. Krasner? I had a question for you. It's been some time. I put in a petition for the Conviction Integrity Unit. I was actually prosecuted by the district attorney, Mr. Seth Williams, and due to the inconsistencies of how he ran his office, I submitted I submitted evidence where he was paid to prosecute me, and I was just wondering, how can I find out about an update on the process of my petition?
Sir, great question, and you certainly got my ears up. That sounds interesting. What you can do is you can send an email to the head of our Conviction Integrity Unit, and her name is Patricia Cummings. It's Cummings is the last name, Patricia the usual way, and that would be patricia.cummings@phila.gov. Send her an email, and let her know that you'd like to follow up and find out what's going on about this. And I'm sure she's very, very diligent, very capable. I'm sure they'll get back to you fairly soon. If you do not hear back from them within a couple of weeks, you feel free to email me as well at same formula, larry.krasner@phila.gov, and we'll make sure you get a response.
Joe, thanks so much. Did you get that, Joe? You got that information?
So that's Patricia.
Patricia.Cummings, Cummings.
Okay, at
phila.gov.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Sure thing. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Also, we have Jamila out of North Philly, DA, who's calling in for a conversation with the Philadelphia District Attorney. Jamila, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. To both of you all, have a great morning. Listen,
right.
I just got your email address. Sir, is that the best way that you will definitely get a correspondence from the citizens? Your email? Because some people like text better. What's your best way of getting reached?
Well, it kind of depends on what the topic is, because it is an office of 600 people. So
yeah, I know it's about crime and the forfeiture. That program I heard you talking about.
Okay, sure. So if you're trying to get to us about forfeiture, then I would say that let me ask you this. Is this because some of your property or a loved one's property?
All of that. I just want to know the best way, because I have another comment, please.
Okay, so the best way to deal with the forfeiture issue, I would say at this point, is to send something to Robert Listenby, who is one of my first assistants, Robert.Listenby, Listen, like listen. Listen.
Okay.
BEE. Listenby at phila.gov. You can also copy it to me if you want to do that.
I will.
All right.
Well, let me just say this.
Real quick, Jamila.
I'm listening to you all talking. It's back and forth, like between the progressives and this and that. Every city you name is catching hell. I think, we need to move to I would much rather, with all due respect, I love democracy, all of that, but I would love for you to focus more on these criminals here in Philadelphia, shooting our women in the head and all this kind of stuff. Please, because we got murder and mayhem here. And I mean, I hear all this political going back and forth. I'm a registered Democrat, and I believe in democracy. But, it's a reason that these people could even come up with this mess about sending some troops in here, because we're catching hell. And let me tell you, don't think that the citizens aren't thinking either or, what can we talk about? Because if you all can't get it done here in Philly, and we've been running murder for years and years, and we can't seem to get it done, I would never ask for something that would affect black people more than anybody. And we know every hell that's coming this way does. But if you all are not doing it, other folks from the community can't get it done, and they getting paid and all this nonsense. Yeah. You know what? What do we have? What you said? Yes, and then we got this encampment down there. Anything that you have to do with dealing with getting that issue resolved, we would really appreciate whatever your office is doing with regard with that, because we don't want another Kensington in North Philly. We have a fair share of stuff.
And Ms. Jamila,
yes.
I'm going to let you. I didn't mean to cut you off because you're making some real good points. I'm sorry about that. I know, but we run it up on time. But you made some real good points. Let me let the DA respond real quick.
Well, let me say this. First of all, Ms. Jamila, I truly appreciate your comment, and I agree with your comment that this is another extremely important topic. We got to deal with the fact that homicides right now are kind of close to the level they were in the last year of the Lynn Abraham administration, 2007, which is terrible. We're up against a lot of stuff. But that does not mean that that's an excuse. There's no excuse here. Everybody in the city, government, non-government, has to pull together to see what we can do. And there is some good news. As I think was mentioned, I was just in a black clergy town hall that went on for almost 3 hours, where there were some really good ideas coming from a lot of people in the police department, some good ideas from our office, and a tremendous number of good ideas coming from the community. So we are all working on it. I am working towards the possibility of having a summit that will be on the gun violence issues, where we can not just talk about what we're doing, but we can pull in some new ideas from around the country. And I'm with you 100%. It is awful. We have to do everything we can about this, the gun violence issue in Philadelphia.
Yes, a multi-front war. We've been talking with District Attorney Larry Krasner. Go to @PhilaDAO, @DA_Larry Krasner on social media, or philly.gov/district attorney. DA, always really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Let's take a break. And Ms. Jamila, too, once again, thank you for that question. Thank you for raising that, because and that is one of the issues that we always get to on Reality Check. It was one of the issues, and I'm glad that you beat us to the punch on that. It's a multi-front war. It's a variety of issues we have to deal with. That is a serious issue. Folks coming into any city and just randomly taking folks or accosting or kidnapping folks, that has to be dealt with, that has to be addressed, while at the same time, Philly's on fire. As far as the violence rate is concerned, and that's got to be addressed, and it's got to be addressed aggressively too. We'll continue to talk more about it. We have to take a break, however, and coming up next on the other side is Councilmember Alan Dom, Philadelphia Councilmember Alan Dom, going to talk about the fiscal health of the city. In fact, he's leading a conversation, a hearing tomorrow about the state of the city's finances. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for the councilman. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Phone lines are always open for elected officials in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So that's a standing rule here on Reality Check. So those phone lines are open in case you have a question for Councilmember Alan Dom, who's coming up next here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial, on Daybreak every morning.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can go to the doctor, receive health screenings and vaccines, and get what they need to live a healthy childhood. Families can be covered by CHIP no matter how much money they make. If you've experienced a recent change in employment or income, CHIP may be a good option for your family. Visit chipcoverspakids.com to apply or learn more.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Listen up, Word seniors. Make sure to listen to Wake Up with Word this week of July 27th for the Dedicated Senior Medical Center Trivia Contest. Dedicated Senior Medical Centers officially opened their new South Philadelphia location at 330 West Oregon Avenue in South Philadelphia. Call 267-338-3411 to schedule your appointment for a center visit. Again, call 267-338-3411 to visit Dedicated Senior Medical Center's new South Philadelphia location.
WordRadio.com.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and WordRadio.com.
Okay, we're waiting on Councilmember Alan Dom. Philadelphia Councilmember Alan Dom is scheduled to join us shortly. He's going to talk about the fiscal health of the city. He actually has a hearing tomorrow, scheduled for tomorrow about that same subject. I believe that hearing is scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. You can go to phlcouncil.com, phlcouncil.com for more information on that hearing. Alan Dom, who's council member at large in Philadelphia. He is at phlcouncil.com/Alan Dom for more information there. And he is on. He's joining us right now here on Reality Check. Council member, how are you doing, sir? Council member, can you hear us? Council member? Not sure what happened to the council member. I thought we had him for a few moments. He has a phone glitch. Okay, so we're having some technical glitches this morning, just a few. Let's see if we can try to get him back. Where we had Councilmember Alan Dom on, had a little bit of phone trouble, so I think we're going to try him again. So we'll have him on very shortly. Phone lines are open in case you have a question for him or some sort of comment. We are talking about the city's fiscal condition, its fiscal health. There is a meeting, a hearing that is scheduled tomorrow that Councilmember Dom is chairing. That is happening tomorrow at 2 p.m. phlcouncil.com/watch. phlcouncil.com/watch. Let me see, is a council member there? Council member? Okay, we don't have him yet. phlcouncil.com/watch. Go to phlcouncil.com. Try to, before 3 p.m. today, first you want to get information. You want to get information on that hearing. And by 3 p.m. today, you can sign up to provide public testimony if you have a concern. You should have a concern if you are a Philadelphia resident, particularly if you are a Philadelphia resident that is impacted by a number of issues in the city, particularly amid pandemic and a number of other alarming crises that the city is going through. You have an opportunity to testify or to provide public comment in tomorrow's hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. We do have the council member on. Council member, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Charles. How you doing?
All right. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. So you're chairing the Committee on Fiscal Stability and Intergovernmental Cooperation, and you have this hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. You have some concerns on the eve of that hearing about you call it a $126 million discrepancy in the revised budget. What do you mean by that? Explain.
Sure. Well, first of all, I will say that we had, during the budget process, I was very uncomfortable voting for any budget increases in this budget. And the last day of council, we called for a hearing. We said we were going to hold the city administration accountable, either on a monthly or quarterly basis, where we want to review not just the revenues, but the expenditures of the city. And what has happened is that the city did a 5-year plan, and then PICA did another 5-year plan. And in the PICA report, it shows a $126 million discrepancy between the administration's information and projections and PICA's projections. And the purpose of this hearing, Charles, just so you know, I'm really clear, is not to point fingers, but to work together and get on the same page. You know, I always like that word team. Together, everyone achieves more. We want to work with the administration and PICA. We want to make sure we're not going to have a problem. This is a time where we all need to come together, whether we're Democrats, Republicans, Independents, or whatever, and do what's best for the city. So our goal really is to make sure there isn't going to be a problem and get to the root of why is PICA saying there's a $126 million discrepancy and the city isn't, and how do we reconcile that?
Let me, okay, so first, when you say PICA, you mean the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, and we did talk with the executive director, I think it was about a few weeks ago, and explain to residents why PICA's opinion on this is important, because PICA, last I checked, PICA, they unanimously approved the city's 5-year plan. So now what they're backtracking and saying, okay, there's a discrepancy there, and why is PICA so important in this equation? I mean, how does that work, that dynamic between City Hall or the administration and also PICA? Why is PICA making determinations or making calls on the city's finances?
Well, you know, PICA goes back to the days when the city was almost close to bankruptcy in the early 1990 period. So it's been around for almost 30 years. And PICA has to approve our 5-year plan and our budgets. And the difference this year, I guess, with PICA's big piece here is that not only were they checking revenues, but now they want to start to check the expenses, which I think is very important. And I also think that PICA raises the issue, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, of overtime and how the city consistently, we budget X dollars for overtime and we seem to consistently exceed that number. And the question is, how do we manage that number better? How do we control our expenses better? Because when you go over by overtime of $30 million a year or 25 or 40 million, that's a lot of money. And that money can be used to help residents across the city. So PICA's approval is crucial. We need their approval. They gave us the approval with contingencies and restrictions as to what they're looking for from us.
Okay. Okay, got it. You know, I have to say, the council member, the way you make this assertion about the discrepancy, the way I'm reading it, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's almost as if the mayor's office is being accused of cooking the books, so to speak. I mean, is that what we're saying here?
No.
Is that the mayor is kind of deliberately misleading folks on the state of the fiscal health?
That is definitely not the case. Let me be really clear. The administration has an outside consulting firm, and PICA has a consulting firm. This is a discrepancy between the two consulting firms. I think everyone on both sides, the administration and PICA, are going by their consultants. We just need to bring these consultants together and figure out, like, hey, why is there a discrepancy? Do we need to get someone else involved here to figure this out? So this information isn't coming from the administration directly or PICA directly. It's coming from their consultants. And we need to make sure who's right is really, you know, Charles, how do I know who's right? How do you know who's right? I don't know. I don't want to wake up in 3 months and find out there was a shortfall.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We're talking with Council Member at Large Alan Dom. Go to phlcouncil.com/Alan Dom on DOMB online if you'd like to touch base with the council member's office. And also, he is chairing a hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. Talking about the city's fiscal health, where that is. What your thoughts on the overall state of the city's finances, council member, and how that looks to you, how that's going to look in the future amid pandemic? The revised city budget, what was it, like more than 5% below what revenues were expected to be at before it had to revise things before pandemic happened. The city's under a lot of fiscal stress, but is there a light at the end of the tunnel somehow with this?
Well, I will say this. There's always a light at the end of every tunnel, okay? Otherwise, it wouldn't be a tunnel. It would be a dead end. But there's a light, and we will get there. Look, clearly we need a vaccine to get over this pandemic. We're hopeful that'll occur sooner versus later. And once that occurs, I think many people are going to be back to more of a normal environment, normal work style, normal tax revenues collected. But, you know, in the big picture, Charles, in the last 4.5 years, the city's budget has increased $900 million, about 4 and change to almost $5 billion, just under $5 billion. So I think one of the questions for this committee originally was, what is the benefit of that increased spending? What are we seeing? What are the efficiencies? What are the measurements? How are we spending our money? That's $900 million over the last almost 5 years. What benefits have occurred? And so that's really one of the goals of this committee. Of course, tomorrow that's going to come out in the next meetings or so, but tomorrow's is focused on this discrepancy. But I really want to know, like, you know, our budget went up like 20-something%. What is better today than 4 years ago?
Yeah. You know, the other thing too, how do we balance the need for, you know, keeping the city's budget intact with the need to respond effectively to a lot of the residential hurt that's happening out there? A lot of folks unemployed, a lot of folks hungry, people worried about whether or not there'll be an extension of federal unemployment benefits, et cetera. You know, I feel like, you know, also why can't Philly be like New York City or Baltimore with respect to crises like heat waves? I have to ask you this, Council. Like, I'm a bit stunned. I'm a bit stupefied as to why Philly can't be much more like a New York City that's, I mean, obviously it has a bigger budget, but it has more people. And Baltimore, they're giving out free air conditioning units to people right now in those cities. Those are cities that we compete with on sports and spiritual levels and emotional levels. But it's like when a heat wave is hitting Philly and adding more stress to the residents and more public health crises, I mean, I understand the city's dealing with a slim budget right now. Every city is. Why can't we do simple things or, you know, to me, kind of no-brainer things like getting free air conditioning units for people in the city of Philadelphia so we can at least alleviate some of the stress?
Right. Well, I'm sure there's a way to figure the air conditioning units out. I think that should not be difficult. But I think the big picture here is that when you look at the top 20 cities in the country, unfortunately, we have the highest level of poverty. We're like 25%. And it might be higher after this pandemic. We then have another 26 to 27% that are eds and meds that don't really pay real estate taxes or business taxes. And when you boil it down, 47 to 48%, maybe 49% of our total population pays all the taxes. One of our goals as a city needs to be to build that tax-paying economic base so we have more money to buy the air conditioners, to spend the money on the program, so we can build a base of people that pay taxes that we can use in other programs we want to do. I'll give you an example, though, Charles, of a program that we need to do more of the kind of programs of a bill I just passed a few months ago called the wage tax bill. We did the research, and it's kind of staggering to me. Of the top 50 cities in the country, ready for this, Charles? Of the top 50 cities in the country, Philadelphia taxes lower-income people the highest. Most cities tax lower-income people 7 to 13%. We tax them at 18.1. When we saw this information, we decided to introduce a wage tax bill that basically refunds to 140,000 people their wage taxes. It could take 10, 20,000 people out of poverty. It could make a big difference. And it helps 140,000 people who are in poverty. They're going to get checks back on the wage tax refund. A family of four earning $32,000 could get $800 or $900 back today just in wage tax. So one of the things I think, this is a measurement tool. What we need to do is to look at everything that we're spending money on and look at it from a data standpoint and say, what is the return? How do we help the people? Like, we raised our budget $900 million. Here's a simple bill that'll cost the city $25 or $30 million. But look at the impact it has compared to some of the other things we've done. We need to look at every nickel and dime we spend and figure out what is the best return for our residents for this money.
And Councilmember, real quick, let me bring on Maurice out of Southwest. He had a question. Real quick, Maurice, I got a question for Councilmember Allen Dom.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I'm listening to your words, and you said go back to normal. Normal was bad. So you talk about with the COVID is devastating, but you got to understand in Philadelphia, this is why we had the murder, and the city is not a place to really relax in the city and neighborhoods, is because we only have 2.5% of businesses in the whole city are black. What do you expect but crime and mayhem when you don't have an alternative for the youth to do? They're not looking forward to getting a job, especially not from another black person, because we have no black businesses here. Why isn't the city council trying to influx money into the black neighborhoods, maybe open up a marketplace for us that's safe and secure, where black people can own their own businesses and have our own black South Street?
And thanks, Maurice. I appreciate that. Councilmember wanted you to respond to it. It's a good point, because that is something that the city controller had raised about a month ago when we had her on. She was showing that a lot of the pandemic relief dollars authorized by the city, most of that money, it seemed, she had a concern in her audit, most of that money seemed to be going to places where it wasn't needed the most. It wasn't going to places where it's vulnerable, it's low incomes, distressed, primarily black and brown. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, it's a very valid point. 2.5%, you're absolutely right, and I've said this, of our businesses are owned by black people in our city. But there's almost 20 to 22% who are entrepreneurs, but the problem is they are single-person entrepreneurs. And so one of the things I was doing before the pandemic was working with the free library system to teach two courses in our libraries, financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And one of the things we need to focus on is how do we teach people who are single entrepreneurs to develop the skill set to hire people, to manage them, and to run a business. It's a different set of skills than being a single entrepreneur. That skill set needs to be taught throughout the city. So those people that are 2.5%, we can build that to 10 or 15 or 20%. Let me mention something else. For 4.5 years, I've been very vocal about two things we need to do in our schools. One, teach financial literacy pre-K to 12th grade. And two, teach technology, coding, and entrepreneurship from 4 years of age up to 12th grade. Make them mandatory. You want to see a change in the city over the next 10, 15 years, we should implement those as mandatory in our school system. The technology alone is a crucial for kids. Look, 4-year-olds can do more tech than some of us my age, okay? These kids can do it and they can learn it, and we need to make it mandatory, because this economy is not going to go back to what it was. It's going to change dramatically, and technology will be a huge part of it.
We've been talking with Councilmember Allen Dom at large. Go to phlcouncil.com/Allen Dom. Also check out his hearing tomorrow on the city's fiscal health. Go to phlcouncil.com for more information. Also by 3 p.m. you can sign up to provide public comment, and also phlcouncil.com/watch tomorrow at 2 p.m. for that hearing. Councilmember, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Charles. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, take care, be safe. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines remain open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. Have an old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Pico will pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you a $75 rebate. That's right, $75. Plus, you can save as much as $150 a year on your energy bill by getting rid of it. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. Be sure your fridge or freezer is plugged in and working at time of pickup.
Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875.
Or visit wordradio.com.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and wordradio.com.
Yeah, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. About to head into the 11 o'clock hour. In the 11 o'clock hour, we are expecting to talk with Congressman Brendan Boyle. Congressman Brendan Boyle joining us here on Reality Check, Philadelphia area congressman. So phone lines are open in case you have a question for him, in case you happen to be in his district, boyle.house.gov. For more information on him and also how to reach his office. Many of you in the WRD listening area may reside in Pennsylvania's 2nd Congressional District, and your congressman is expected or is scheduled to join us at 11 o'clock. Just to give you a heads up, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Let me go to AC out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check.
How you doing, Charles? All the time when I call programming, I just get some questions just based on your programming, and I get all the way off my subject, but I hope I don't. I always have a problem with politicians coming on and talking about it's nobody to blame. If you have a deficit that large, besides COVID, and we've been talking about these figures in this $144 million, this shortfall, it was a surplus, and then you put things in the budget like raises, it's somebody to blame. And those people to blame ought to be held accountable. Because when you come in with that kind of soft shoe talk, that's why we keep going into the problems, because nobody's held accountable. But be that as it may, I wanted to call in about the police commissioner not being part of that program on violence that y'all had. Excellent program. She should be there, especially when it was online. That's unexcusable, Charles, and she needs to be called out on that.
Okay.
So it was a good
I appreciate
program.
it. I thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for watching, too.
Can't do it. I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you
We
saying,
can't
AC?
be giving her passes. This black woman, this thing, that thing. No, she should have been there. You had a good program, and it was unexcusable, especially when it was by Zoom. No excuse. You could have been in your car. You could have been in your living room. No excuse not to be part of that.
I will say this. You had the city's elected district attorney. He was a busy man. I mean, he's busy. And he hung in there for the entire 2.5 hours, the 2.5 hour stretch, even when he wasn't like on panel yet. But he wanted to make sure that he was there.
Yep.
I have to give him. I don't. I'm not doing this as a booster for Larry Krasner or like campaigning or anything like that. I don't do that for anyone, least of all elected officials in Philly. But I'm just saying, I recognize that and I appreciated that. His panel wasn't until the very end of the 2.5 hour stretch of that moderated conversation. I co-moderated with Cherry Gregg, and it was a very insightful conversation. There was some things that I learned even. And so, I mean, if he could do it, if the city's DA can do it, I mean, I understand he's not the police commissioner, and it's not like he's overseeing 6,400 primarily armed officers of the city of Philadelphia, and he's not, but he's still a busy guy. She could have at least made it for like a half an hour, maybe an hour, or committed that half hour at least and said, hey, you know what? Instead of sending my deputy commissioner, let me go ahead and make it. And that's the part of the problem. I wrote about this in Philadelphia Citizen. It's like, get your communications tight, Commissioner. Right. If you would just like be a bit more present in terms of your communications game plan, your communications play, and just kind of at least optically give the impression that you're engaged, people will feel at least a little bit more confident about the city's law enforcement response to rising violence. But it's just like she hasn't found her rhythm on that yet. And so I get you, AC, and I appreciate you watching, however.
Okay, thank you so much, Brother Charles. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Brother AC, too, and thanks for I do appreciate what Sister Jamila was saying earlier. Whereas I do appreciate that we have to highlight we should be all, like in any city, petrified and concerned and wanting our elected officials to address federal law enforcement agents or paramilitary going into cities and arresting folks, or just like randomly searching and seizing folks. That's like Third Reich style activity right there. And so if you don't check it, even check it as soon as you see a hint of it, or even before it happens, it can spiral out of control. So that's an issue worth addressing and talking about. We got to walk and chew gum, right? And it's not even about walk and chew gum. It's just a very serious matter. So I appreciate any local elected official or DA raising it and us talking about it. We need to talk about it. But Mr. Miller makes a point. But elected officials are also going to have to be as bullish and as muscular in terms of their response and in terms of their approach to the rising violence in the city. Obviously the Trump administration is using and other sinister forces at work are using rising violence in cities as an excuse to play this game. And so it is, to her point, it is very, and in fact, I'm glad she asked it. And that was like, we were coming up on that with the DA to ask him like, well, what's the plan on that? And we'll continue to talk about that throughout the stretch of this weekend. I mean, just pretty much every day or every week we're going to be addressing that. Let me go to Titan out of New Jersey, who's calling in for a reality check. Titan, what's up? Titan, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me, Charles?
Yes, sir.
All right, hey, peace, guys. How you guys doing today?
Peace. All right, brother.
I don't know, did you hear Dr. Brown on the radio just before you came on the air?
No, I did not.
Well,
he
talked about toilet plume, but I'm gonna stay on the DA. I have this issue, Charles. I'm a veteran, right? My son is currently a border agent and a veteran. So I have an vested interest to make sure this thing go peaceful.
Yeah.
Because I love us, you know that, Charles, and I love my people.
That's right.
And I don't think black and brown people on any side need to be harming each other, because then we're going to be showing the kids in the streets that we ain't no different.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Now, as far as to this gun violence issue, I'm pledging Charles $10, and I'm going to talk to the mayor. And Krasner, when I spoke with him last week on your show, he had a guy call me back, so I'm in contact with them. But okay. I'm pushing a mama and dad program, and I'm gonna take $10 off every product that I sell, and I'm donating it to the city. I'm great, contact the mayor. I'm from West Philly, Charles. I went to Blankenburg Elementary. I grew up on 41st and Pennsylvania Grove.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Philly. I got a grandson, 16 years old. And I'm going to end on this note, Charles. Dr. Brown said that we should not send our children to the schools because they will possibly get coronavirus in the bathrooms. The kids will touch each other and not wear their masks and things like that. So I want to end on this note. I'm reaching out to Dr. Height, and we're going to change the city, Charles, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying on WRD, and I'm going to give every WRD listener 10% off, but $10 off of every seller of mine, Charles, is going to the Philly Mamba Dad program, because as Philly goes, the country goes. So we have a good DA who is speaking up to the president, and we need to support and everybody work together. And I'm in on that note, Charles. Just listen to what you got to say, brother. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate you, brother. All right. Thanks so much for that. And thanks for that commitment. Yeah, we do need some creative organization, mobilization, and fundraising activities around what's happening. I mean, I understand like people are very frustrated, and the tendency is to watch what's unfolding and to scream at the wall or to scream and want to strangle everyone involved because of what's going on. But we have got to come up with a plan. We got to come up with some creative planning. That is a problem as far as the reopening of Philadelphia schools, and there's a lot of conversation around that, from the inequality gaps that could worsen or widen in terms of who's receiving education and how, with the, this new phenomenon. It's really not a new phenomenon. People were actually doing this before the pandemic, but they're calling them pandemic pods or micro schools. So, people who have means are collaborating with other parents. Say you're a parent, you collaborate with maybe like 3 or 4 other parents, and y'all create a little micro school. You hire a tutor. Some people are in a position to do that. A lot of folks, particularly in a distressed city like Philly, are not in a position to do that, and so they have no choice because parents are working. They can't have especially their young kids up in the house all day while they have to go to the front line. They have to work, and they have to earn a living if they still have a job in this pandemic. So they have to send their kids to school. Kids have to stay engaged, and they have to go to school. And so it's a rock and a hard place. Pressure has got to be put on, I think, most prominently on, talking about Philly. This really should be happening everywhere, and it's not. But let's talk about Philly as a case study here. And since Titan was focusing on Philly and everyone else right now, and there's a lot of concern about the schools reopening, I don't understand why there is no pressure on, why there is no big public conversation with the city's employer class. Like, I don't understand it. To me, that's like the first thing you would want to do, that elected officials, city and state in particular, the city, the mayor, the city council, going to the city's business community and saying, hey, we understand you have people working for you as businesses who are parents, have to send their kids back to school because you're putting pressure on them as we reopen the economy to make sure they're working. The parents just feel split, feel stretched, because it's like, on one hand, they like want to keep their kids home because of the fear of infection, but on the other hand, they can't keep the kids at home because they got to go to work, because the employer's like, well, you got to go to work. If you don't go to work, even in this pandemic, you're going to get fired. We're going to terminate you. It's like that. Where's that conversation with like the greater Chamber of Commerce in the city, in the area, about like where, the obligation that the business community has towards helping this situation or alleviating. No one was. People are just people in Philadelphia. I don't know what it is, but elected. I really don't know what it is, because I've had multiple conversations, offline, online, on air, off air. Like the city's influencer elected class, its grass tops leadership class is just petrified of having these difficult but necessary ask and demand conversations of the business community. And I don't see it happening like that in other cities. I mean, I understand there's this very complicated, complex relationship between elected leaders, and I understand it as someone who's worked in that space. And there's always a complex, complicated relationship between elected leaders and a region's or a city's business community. I understand that, on a variety of levels. But in Philly, it's kind of special, the amount of like lack of spine that the elected leaders have when it comes to interfacing with this very powerful business community about, hey, how can you all contribute here? How can you all alleviate some of the stress here? It just stuns me it stuns me. I've been saying it for a while now. It became a lot, it crystallized a lot more as I got older. And I'm like, oh, this is like, I see it. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. It's sickening. And really, the elected leadership, the leadership class around them, this is the black leadership class included, really it has to figure out a way to tackle through that, to soldier through that. Because residents are watching and residents are expecting a lot more, and they should. But that goes into that debate over whether or not the schools should reopen. I'm just not seeing that happening. No one's talking about that. No one's asking about it. But I've been asking to write about it in major prominent publications in the city. They're afraid to. I'm probably going to have to write about it myself and just put it somewhere myself, because people are like, well, I don't want you to, don't call them out. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a violence crisis. What are you talking about? Everyone's in the same boat here. Why not? Anyway, I'm sorry. I got to go to break. I'm a little bit late. Let's go into the 11 o'clock hour. We're going to talk to Congressman Brendan Boyle coming up next. Here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Weather and traffic to keep you informed for your drive home. In the happy hour with Sincerely Sarita. Monday through Thursday, 4 till 7 p.m. Right here on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Brothers and sisters, we've seen enough. It's time to get together. We can do big things together, just like they did. President Obama and Vice President Biden passed healthcare reform, helped rescue the auto industry, and created more than 15 million jobs. And right now, together, we can help Joe Biden do it again as president, to unify this country and fix the issues that we're facing right now. Real police reform, expanding access to high-quality education, protecting our right to vote, and rebuilding the economy so that it works for us. Now is the time for us to rise up and do this together with Joe Biden. Go to joebiden.com/Black America to learn more.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for President.
The coronavirus continues to affect us all, and AARP is here in Philadelphia, actively supporting you and your community. Every day, they're providing trusted information from experts, working to protect people from fraud, supporting family caregivers, and making it easier for neighbors to help neighbors through the new AARP Community Connections website. Learn what AARP is doing to connect and support our community during this unprecedented time. We may be apart, but we're not alone. Click to connect at aarp.org/near you.
Now, with more clarity, this is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back. We're waiting on Congressman Brendan Boyle. He was scheduled at the top of this hour. Phone lines are open in case you have questions for your congressman. Congressman Brendan Boyle, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900, especially if you are in Philly and you reside in the 2nd Congressional District, which he represents, boyle.house.gov for more information, 215-634-8065. Toll-free, it is 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open while we talk with Congressman Brendan Boyle. He is expected to join us shortly. Some good comments and some good ideas here on our Facebook live stream. Just real quick before we get the congressman on, C. Marie Work-Patterson responded to Titan from New Jersey and his idea to donate to the city. She was saying, why donate to the city versus using the money where you see fit? The city is the culprit. That's C. Marie Work-Patterson saying that on Facebook Live. Lee Love makes an interesting suggestion. I'd like to explore that further at some point. Solution for working parents: give them a stipend for staying home during school hours. Give them a stipend. So, once again, that collaboration between like that private-public partnership and kind of like talking to the businesses, like, where's the Chamber of Commerce on this? Junior Lee, another good thing to explore, another idea, schools should also have evening hours as well as daytime hours to help working parents. So that's worth exploration. I appreciate that. But thank you both for listening in and chiming in with some ideas. Let's kind of brainstorm here. We are talking now with Congressman Brendan Boyle, represents the 2nd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, boyle.house.gov for more information, at Rep. Brendan Boyle on Twitter as well, on social media, if you'd like to engage him there. He's joining us now here on Reality Check. Congressman, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, great to be back with you.
All right, good to have you back. Really appreciate it, as always. Your thoughts on a new relief package or a new relief recovery package coming out of Congress, whether or not that will pass eventually, what's the timing of that? People are having some real concerns, they should, over the expiration of federal unemployment benefits, and there's just a lot of different ideas that are floating about, from not extending those unemployment benefits to just extending them for a very short period of time, to maybe even lowering or decreasing the amount that people receive from $600 to $200 to $400. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, so first I share those concerns. I mean, just to remind people, it was late May, and I know we've talked about this, one of the previous times I've been on, but it was late May, 2 months ago now, that the House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act. That's a $3 trillion stimulus, would authorize $2,000 a month payments to people until this crisis is over, would extend unemployment insurance through the end of the year. It also had plenty of other things as well, such as $1 trillion in there for state and local governments, so we didn't have layoffs at the local level. What has happened since late May over on the Senate side? Nothing. At first, the White House said they opposed it. So did Mitch McConnell, opposed doing any sort of relief package. Then they reversed themselves in late June and said, well, maybe another package will be needed. Now they've clearly come around to doing one, except here's the problem, why we're sitting here on a Monday morning in late July and still nothing. The Senate Republicans themselves and the Senate Republicans with the White House are so divided with themselves, they don't even know what they want. They were supposed to announce their own package last Thursday. Then they canceled that. It was going to be Friday. Then they postponed it. It was going to be this morning, and it just got postponed again. So unfortunately, the other side of the aisle, it's kind of hard to reach an agreement with folks who don't even know what they want. And the longer that they're stalling, ordinary Americans, millions of them, are the ones who are being hurt by this. So, what I would say to Senator McConnell and to the White House, I've said this publicly, we have to get this done. It needs to get done now, this week. And, the quicker they come to the realization, the better off the American people will be. Final thing, you asked me what I think will happen. I do believe, because of the economic necessity and the political realities, they will finally have to pass something that looks more like our HEROES Act than they originally wanted to. The problem is it might, they're not exactly the fastest learners. And what concerns me is if it still takes them a long time to come to that realization, and we're here in mid-August still working on this, which would be incredibly damaging to the economy and to the American people.
Let me ask this real quick, Congressman. I wonder, so it's a combination of, in my mind, I'm just trying to work this out, and I want to get your thoughts on this or your impression. It's a combination of what you just said, there's a lot of internal disagreement within Republican rank and file on the Senate side and between them and the White House on exactly what that package looks like. Also, are you concerned about the political timing? They're running the clock on this, approving something a little bit closer to election as far as they can take this. You see where I'm headed with this? We're not going to do anything in August. Maybe late September, early October. That's our October surprise. Hey, everyone, we're passing, and they're going to seem like that it's their stimulus package and it's their unemployment benefits extension. And here come Senate Republicans and Donald Trump to save the day on the eve of the election.
Yeah, I mean, look, I totally get that, and I know how deeply cynical Mitch McConnell has proven himself to be. That's why doing interviews like this is so important, to get the word out there. and to let people know the truth. The reality is, we passed this on the Democratic side over in the House in May. I think this had been reported publicly, but if not, I'll tell you, I was hearing it privately on the Hill, and I'm happy to say it publicly, that Mitch McConnell, from way back in the beginning, realized that there was going to be another package, but he wanted to slow things down so that there wouldn't be 7, 8, 9 packages, that he wanted there to be as few as possible, and that was one of the reasons why he was dragging his feet. So not so much because of the election timing, but just because, if he committed and had quickly passed our package in late May, then we might be coming back right now for another one.
For more.
It's amazing. I have to say, the commitment that some of my Republican colleagues in Congress have to making sure the American people don't get, God forbid, an extra $600 that they desperately need during a pandemic is just absolutely remarkable and astounding. And in my view, it's both immoral and also bad economics. I'll also say this, too. If the Republican side and the White House attempt to get too cute and delay passing something until late September because they think it'll help them politically, the sort of economic damage that will be done to this country between now and then would be so great that I think it would actually hurt them politically than help them.
Got it. We're talking with Congressman Brendan Boyle. Go to boyle.house.gov for more information there, and also how to get in touch with his office, particularly if you're a constituent in the 2nd Congressional District of Pennsylvania, at Rep. Brendan Boyle on social media as well for more social media engagement to find out what he's up to. Congressman, we have a question from Frida out of Oak Lane, who's calling in for our reality check conversation with Congressman Boyle. Frida?
Good morning. How are you both?
Good morning.
Yeah,
how are you doing?
Frida.
Hi. Well, I'm definitely a constituent, Congressman Boyle, and I have 2 questions. The first one is, are you a signer for the bill to consider reparations? And if not, why not? If you are, I just need to know that you are. And the second question is, since there are 2 bills, what has to be done to reconcile both of the bills, which would go to the president for signature? And I'll hang up, and thank you very much.
Yeah. So on the first, with respect to reparations, I think it is time, given everything that has happened right now, to have that be part of the conversation in terms of considering everything that is going on. I would not be, optimistic that something, like that would happen. But I think I don't think anything can be off the table when we're talking about finally rectifying a lot of the both past but also current and systemic issues. How you segment something off the table initially, I just don't think that's practical. Now, in terms of what happens with legislation and the danger that there'll be different iterations and nothing happens, what has happened now is that the House of Representatives, as I mentioned, passed the HEROES Act in May. That was passed. That is sitting over in the Senate. Once we reach an agreement, again, once Senate Republicans finally come up with their own proposal, or have let us know what exactly they want in this negotiation, then what I would imagine is they would take the piece of legislation that's already over there that we sent. They would probably amend that and send it back to us, or they would simply send their own bill to us for an up or down vote in the House. But before they did that, it would already have been agreed to by our side. So that way you didn't have this continuing going back and forth. So yes, in other words, there will certainly need to be, one way or the other, there will need to be another vote in the House of Representatives in terms of what we agreed to.
Are you co-sponsored on that legislation?
No, if you're talking about Sheila Jackson-Lee, H.R. 41, I don't think I've added. Sorry, I thought it was 40, but are you saying 41?
Oh, yeah, I think it is 40. Yeah, it is 40. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I have to check with her. I'm not sure that I don't think my name has been added as of yet, but I think it's time to have that consideration. But again, I would make it part of all of these conversations. I'm probably the signer now of 10 different resolutions or bills that really have stemmed out of this whole year, and marches that have gone on. And I think, today, for example, in the House of Representatives, we'll be passing a legislation that passed the Senate in terms of a commission that specifically talks about the issues facing African-American men and African-American boys in our society. I think we have to consider everything holistically.
Yeah, I think. Well, now we have your colleagues, Congressman Dwight Evans, also Congresswoman Madeline Dean, and Mary Gay Scanlon. They all have co-sponsored on HR 40.
Yeah,
so just kind of.
But like I said, I mean, I am. If I'm not on it already, I do plan to go ahead and add my name as well.
Okay. Oh, you heard it here first on Reality Check. Okay, thank you for that, Congressman. I will say this, and Frida, thanks for that question. Forget about reparations passing, period, if we get a second term of Donald Trump. That's and Republicans just in steady control of the Senate. That's just not going to happen. But I just kind of throwing a little bit of commentary on that and the urgency of the moment. Congressman, hold on one second. Osize from West Philly is calling in for a Reality Check and has a question for Congressman Brendan Boyle. Osize?
Thank you for taking my call. I'm the male co-chair of NCOBA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, Philadelphia chapter. And first of all, HR 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans Act, is not really a bill to give reparations, but it is a bill to study the remedies. There's no more studying about why we need to have reparations, but it's a bill to come up with what are some of the remedies that can come up to help deal with these crimes against humanity from 1619 to COVID-19. Now, we visited the Congressman's office back in April 30th, 2019, and we met with his assistant, Ted Steinberg. But at that time, we had 119 co-sponsors. And today, right now, we have 140 co-sponsors, and Representative Boyle is not one of them. And I just sent another email to Ted Steinberg last week, and I was asking a question. So I'm glad to hear that Representative Boyle is going to be a co-signer on that bill, because Sheila Jackson Lee wants to take the bill to the floor this year, but she wants to have 150 co-signers. And right now, we have 150.
Well,
go ahead, Congressman.
You heard it here on WURD. There's now 141. So you'll see my name. I don't know how long that takes, if it's a couple days, but I do think that this is, now the time and the right opportunity. There are about 10 different pieces of legislation that are out there, again, along the same spectrum. I think this is now the time to have finally this conversation. You need certain windows to open. And it needs to be done in a careful, thoughtful way, which hopefully is an approach that I take not just to this, but to all pieces of legislation. There are a number of my colleagues I know, in talking with Karen Bass, she has a few other ideas in this area. Kamala Harris has a piece of legislation that I've looked at for the House side that has to do with the redlining issue, which I'm extremely enthusiastic about, because I actually think that when we look at sort of the things that would do the most long-term good, most good now, but also long-term, I think that approach is a really smart one. So, I'm really supportive of these efforts. I think this is the time and place. We cannot allow – I mentioned I participated in a march on Fifth Street not only about a week ago, and I said this at the rally afterwards. We cannot allow this opportunity to pass and have nothing come out of it. It would be a tragedy on top of a tragedy, and that is something that I'm deeply concerned about happening. By the way, we passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act a few weeks ago. McConnell has bottled it up in the Senate, and I am concerned that you don't hear as much in the national political conversation about that bill now as you did, say, a month ago. So. Making sure that we actually produced real legislative change out of this summer is the top priority, and that we don't allow this moment to go to waste.
Right, right. No, I appreciate that, Congressman. Congressman, I wanted to ask about some other topics as well. You had expressed some concerns regarding the National Defense Authorization Act. That's the new defense budget. You were concerned about increases. I know there's been a lot of controversy over that concerning the naming of bases, a lot of military bases, Army bases in particular, because I know the Marines have made changes on their bases, but using the names of Confederate treasonous generals and soldiers as the names of these bases. But wanted to talk about, there was some controversy over that. You wanted to clarify why you voted against the National Defense Authorization Act last week.
Yeah, just to be clear, I am 100% supportive of renaming the idea that any base in the United States of America should be named after people who literally were traitors and declared war against the United States of America is not only wrong, but just bizarre. I voted for the bill that passed, fortunately, to remove Roger Taney's bust from the U.S. Capitol, given that he was the Chief Justice who authored the Dred Scott decision, as well as legislation that would remove the busts of other, Confederate military officials. I don't know of going to any other nation's capital and seeing a statue of someone who declared war against that country. I mean, the concept is really bizarre. Now, as far as the NDAA itself, and not just that one specific provision, look, this is about priorities, and I have voted for national defense authorizations in previous years. I think you always have to look at what is the appropriate number in light of everything else that's going on. Over the last 3 years, our military budget is 20% higher. Given COVID-19, given all of the enormous economic and health demands that we have right now, given at the moment I'm fighting for more money so that literally our Philadelphia schools can survive, how in the world can I justify voting for a bill at that large a number of the military budget? So I was one of only about 40 Democrats who voted no. So sometimes when you're in the minority or a vast minority, it's not the most comfortable place, but I think that it's the right policy decision. I think the size of the defense budget for this year is just too large in light of all the other priorities that we have out there.
Yeah, it is pretty massive. I think it was increasing about, what was it, $760 billion? Is that, am I off by a few numbers?
That's correct, which is that's the overall figure, which is a $100 billion increase over the last 3 years.
Wow.
The fight against ISIS, thank God, is a lot easier right now than where it was 3 years ago. Our other priorities, while important, I believe in a strong national defense coupled with strong diplomacy, strong and smart policy. That said, we need to shift priorities. I mean, we've had to pass over, not even including the HEROES Act, which obviously hasn't become law. When you look at the previous bills that we did on stimulus, the CARES Act, and the other phases of CARES Act, we're up to $3 trillion of spending, and I support it. I think that we have to do it. I think we have to do more. To then also talk about an increase in the defense budget, to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
We've been talking with Congressman Brendan Boyle. He joins us occasionally here on Reality Check. Go to boyle.house.gov. He represents Pennsylvania's 2nd Congressional District. Also at Rep. Brendan Boyle on social media, on Twitter more specifically. Always good to have you, Congressman. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Talk to you again. Thank you. All right. And as you just heard here on Reality Check, the Congressman announcing that he will sign on as a co-sponsor to H.R. 40. The Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act, which has been introduced by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas. He just made that commitment here on air on Reality Check on WURD regarding H.R. 40. So it's a bit of news coming out of Reality Check Monday edition today. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about fair housing rules, about segregation. We have a CAP Corner coming up next. Alexandra Cawthorn Gaines of the Center for American Progress here to talk about the Trump administration's latest attacks on fair housing rules. and the fight to desegregate neighborhoods, desegregate housing. That fight is continuing in earnest. But Alexandra Cawthorn Gaines to talk about or explain what's going on right now here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
Seniors, does your doctor regularly reach out to check on you? Can you walk into your doctor's office and see them if you need to? Do you have your doctor's cell phone number and can you call them anytime, day or night? At Dedicated Senior Medical Center, their only specialty is caring for seniors. Dedicated makes it easy to get the primary care you deserve. Doctors spend more time with patients than the doctors you may be used to. They offer telehealth visits, help you get your medications, and even make sure you get to your appointments. If your doctor isn't treating you like family, it's time to say yes to Dedicated Senior Medical Center. Call Dedicated Senior Medical Center today to schedule a visit and find out what you're missing. Call 267-443-1900. That's 267-443-1900. Appointments are available now.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staton Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staton, Executive Director of LESIT.
No fear, just facts. WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. It's the Monday edition here on the home of Black Talk Media, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app as well. And continue to go on twitter.com. You can engage me at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. Also leave comments, which some of you are doing. So some interesting comments and observations and questions here on our Facebook live stream, where many of you are watching in by Word TV, via Word TV on our Facebook live stream, facebook.com/4word. Also want to appreciate folks who did stream in. I want to apologize too. I do want to apologize real quick for just a little bit of misinformation last week that was handed to me in terms of where the Facebook live stream of that discussion on gun violence would be housed. It was not at, it was actually, we received bad information in terms of, it was at they gave us the old Facebook page for Black Clergy of Philly and Vicinity. The new Facebook page for Black Clergy and Vicinity is Black Clergy Philly. Black Clergy Philly, facebook.com/Black Clergy Philly, and that's where that conversation did take place. A number of people were already there and did understand it, but I fear that folks probably went to the old Facebook page and were a little bit confused and did not and missed that wonderful conversation that we had. Because there's a lot of work to do. I have a lot of concerns coming out of that conversation too, which I'll share with people a little bit later on, because there's not a whole lot of awareness around the city's response plan. It's like 100-day pre-pandemic violence response plan. A lot of advocates that we had on that town hall or on that virtual town hall that took place last Thursday evening had not read it or were not included in the planning phase of putting that 100-day proposal together, that 100-day plan together. So I'm really concerned about that. City Hall's got to do a lot better engaging folks on the grassroots level. So and making sure that they are real stakeholders, that they have real input, that they're the leaders too in putting these plans together, particularly when now we have a situation once again in Philadelphia as of today, homicides 31% above where they were this time last year. So we'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later on in the show, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it every day this week and moving forward. Alexandra Cawthorn Gaines is Vice President of the Poverty to Prosperity Program for the Center for American Progress. Go to americanprogress.org for more information. She has some concerns about the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson, recently announcing that he will be ending, or HUD, the Trump administration, will be ending a regulation that forces local governments to comply with the Fair Housing Act. This has far-reaching consequences, many destructive, and Alexandra is here to talk with us about that. She has some concerns about it. She's joining us for our occasional CAP Corner that we do in conjunction with the Center for American Progress based in Washington, D.C. Alexandra, how are you doing?
I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
All right. Good morning. Good morning. So explain to us what's happening right now. What exactly is Secretary Carson doing, and what's the significance and necessity of this Fair Housing Act? Because we've noticed a lot of different movements that have been taking place by the Secretary, by the administration, by HUD on fair housing issues. So what's very different about this time? Why is it so significant?
Right. So just for framing, the Trump administration's attack on the affirmatively fair housing rule, which we're going to call AFFH for short, that's a mouthful, is one, as you said, of several attacks that have been put forward over the last few years that are really intended to weaken protections for individuals and families who face unjust barriers to safe and fair housing. And I think for this rule in particular, it's important to contextualize it. So I do want to mention briefly the Fair Housing Act, which this is connected to. The Fair Housing Act of 1968, as we know, implemented comprehensive reform. And the aim of that was really to outlaw overt discrimination against any person based on race, sex, color, disability, religion, status, and national origin. So this act really represented a landmark advance toward equitable sale, rental, and homeownership for all Americans. And in 2015, the Obama administration really sought to bolster the Fair Housing Act by passing the Affirmative Fair Housing Rule, which really required any jurisdiction or any partner of HUD, so those are local housing authorities and others, that receive federal funding to analyze patterns and causes of residential segregation. And not only analyze those patterns, but create an actionable plan to correct disparities. And when we talk about disparities, those can be related to opportunity, they can be related to fair housing choice, racial segregation, and concentrated poverty. So really with this latest attack, the Trump administration is essentially promoting policy that's going to entrench segregation and discrimination against marginalized communities. And it can almost be seen in this light of that campaign continuing to pander to who they perceive to be white suburban voters, right, at the expense of people of color and people with low income. So that's what's really concerning to us about this latest attack.
That's kind of like the whole purpose. Like there's a political motivation out of maintaining or giving the impression that we're going to maintain segregation. Is it reasonable to ask, Alexandra, that if we're not going to have fair housing rules, then why do we need a housing and urban development agency? Right? Wasn't the agency or the Department of Housing and Urban Development, wasn't that built around the mission of fair housing?
That is one of their key missions. I would say that's a critical one, but HUD also administers a number of affordable housing programs. So we don't want HUD to fall back on its responsibility to affirmatively promote fair housing, but we also want HUD around because we have a number of housing subsidy programs that people are desperately in need of, especially at a time like this when we're facing record evictions. So it makes it even more cruel that the administration would promote these rules that do nothing to bolster housing for people who are really in need of it, while also focusing on the specter of communities changing and looking different from what people think they should, when it's really HUD's role to make sure that we are preventing systematic discrimination in housing.
Mm-hmm. Does Secretary Carson even understand like the dimensions of what's or the magnitude of what's going on here? Like he's not a housing expert on any level. Wasn't in the beginning. I wonder about just his sort of his scope of expertise. I mean, he was a neurosurgeon. And I'm just, I wonder about that. I wonder if you wonder about that, about like, does he have any kind of grasp of exactly what's going on here? Like what he is authorizing or what he has been tasked to do?
I mean, that is an excellent point. He doesn't have the background and expertise in housing by any means, any stretch of the imagination. And when you look at I was looking at his Twitter earlier and looking at a thread around this rule that he released around the time that this rule came out. And he talks about how AFFH is a ruse for social engineering under the guise of desegregation. He talks about the funding that AFFH is aligned with and how that funding's been misused and abused. So really what he has are political talking points, right? Like he's doing this for purely political reasons, not for anything that actually is helpful to anyone. And so it's clear that, this decision is not based in a grounding of housing law, of what communities are facing. It's really a political attack.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it very much appears that way. We're talking with right now, if you're just not tuning in, we're convening our weekly CAP Corner, which we do in conjunction with the Center for American Progress, Washington, D.C. based think tank. Go to AmericanProgress.org for wonderful insights, analysis. We bring that knowledge to you here each week here on Reality Check. And we are talking with Alexandra Cawthorn Gaines, who's been on here before, if I'm not mistaken, Vice President of the Poverty to Prosperity Program at the Center for American Progress. She is at ACG in DC on social media, on Twitter more specifically, if you'd like to keep track of what she is researching and what she's talking about, including issues like that, like this, which we're discussing now, the Fair Housing Rule here on Reality Check. So we're talking about the administration's reasoning, that it's probably to encourage more segregation. It's a political play. Are banks, the financial sector, other interests and stakeholders, are they getting anything out of this, Alexandra? I wonder, are there other interests that were lobbying for these sorts of changes beyond just the administration coming in or Trump becoming the president? You have Secretary Carson there, and they're saying, hey, you know what? This is just all part of our program to completely reverse everything that President Obama did over his 8 years as president, to completely just erase him from the presidential history books. I mean, aren't there other stakeholders and advocates and interest and lobbying groups that are at play here?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I think I saw recently that there are actually some banks and other entities that are concerned about these rules being weakened, essentially. They actually are concerned about the implementation of things that are affecting affordable and fair housing. Which is interesting, right? Like you would think that you might think, especially someone like me who tends to be more cynical, that they would be a part of this lobby to dismantle that. Really, I think when I was on here before, I talked about the SNAP rules, the food stamp rules that the administration was putting forward, regulatory reform to really dismantle government's role in addressing poverty, right? Like it's my perspective, it's our organization's perspective that the government has an affirmative role in addressing poverty and all of its conditions, including affordable housing, including food, including all of those things. And so HUD is really contending that this rule is ineffective, that the AFFH rule is ineffective. But in doing that, they're ignoring the positive steps that have been taken to date and the fact that AFFH-A has not actually been given enough time to be meaningfully implemented. I mean, it's only been essentially 4 years since this rule came into play. So the cynical part of me is very much, focused on the fact that this is just another play in their book around discrimination and, again, pandering to voters, particularly those that they perceive to be white suburban voters, at the expense of people of color. Yeah,
it's sort of a dog whistle. Hey,
absolutely.
Cutting out or eliminating, deconstructing fair housing rules is a dog whistle that, hey, you know what? No more, you don't have to worry about any more NIMBYism from black folks moving into your neighborhoods.
Yep, absolutely.
You don't have to see them anymore on your street. And so, it's just, it's disturbing, it's distressing. We know it's morally reprehensible Even the bank, we're understanding that the banks in the financial sector, even like they're not even down with it because, and that's why I'd like to talk about a little bit more, Alexandra, as far as like the business case for keeping these kind of housing rules intact. Because Trump, he comes from real estate, right? I mean, that's how he, that's how he became notable and had relative success. I'm putting air quotes around that in business. So. Expanding and strengthening fair housing laws, I mean, there's a business case for it, right? I mean, do we see that? Do we see like how much more money is made or how much more money is generated for the economy when you strengthen or when you support fair housing rules?
That is actually an excellent question. I don't have figures for that, but I imagine there has to have been some analysis done around how much more money is generated, especially at a time like this where from what I understand, due to coronavirus, the housing market really has constricted. There are fewer options in terms of houses that are available, especially if you're looking at sales. So at a time like this, banks want to incentivize folks to go out, especially when they have concerns about the virus, right, spreading and being able to social distance. They want to incentivize people to go out and purchase homes. And so in certain communities, you're actually seeing an uptick because we have historically low interest rates right now and things of that nature. So it's really against, promoting or dismantling fair housing rules at a time like this is incredibly unhelpful from my perspective to businesses.
Yeah, that's what I would think too. I would be real curious to kind of get, some numbers around that, as far as like the business case. We always talk about like what the moral imperative is, but there's certain interests. They don't care about the altruism of it. They care about like, okay, well, bottom line, what happens to my bottom line on this? Okay, so there's no, removing this rule, this particular regulation that we brought you on to talk about today. It lifts the onus from cities. It doesn't require cities to comply with fair housing rules. But how can we make sure that cities keep on doing this? Like, so, any city government that suddenly says quietly, oh, you know what, that's one less like stressful thing that we have to do. We don't have to worry about complying with fair housing rules. But how do we make sure that they bake this into all of their public policy on the municipal level, that this is like an ongoing thing despite what the feds are doing? So the feds won't do it, fine, but we want to make sure that the cities keep on doing it. How do we do that?
Well, I think for one, collective voices matter. I think certainly what we saw with the AFFH rule is that there were tools that were launched that allowed local governments to assess their fair housing strategies and how they were working. And so I would encourage local governments to continue to utilize those tools to the extent that they're available. I know that the administration suspended implementation, right? And so some of these tools that the Obama administration had provided for states to make those assessments are not as easily accessible as they once have been. But I would encourage jurisdictions to continue to analyze fair housing, to continue to rally HUD, rally the administration to make sure that they're provided with tools so they can continue to do those assessments. And then just think of other ways to implement affordable housing strategies, right? Making sure that they're investing in the stock of affordable housing, especially when we're on the verge of a huge eviction crisis right now, as people lose their unemployment insurance and as people lose their jobs. So really doing anything that local governments can to make sure that people have access to affordable and fair housing is critical. I mean, beyond the sort of wonky technical, rules like AFFHA, AFFH. So I would just encourage governments to continue to think about ways to partner with business, to expand those investments, and continue to assess their implementation of fair housing.
Yeah, that's going to be real important. So it's like, we can't really expect anything from Washington at this time, not probably until there's some kind of regime change, and hopefully that happens by November or a little bit after November, since things might take a while in terms of ballot counting. But we're hoping that folks understand, like, don't expect anything from Washington at this point. But that doesn't preclude you from doing stuff, from changing policy within your city legislatures, within your city halls, et cetera, on the municipal and county level. We've been talking with the vice president of poverty and of the Poverty to Prosperity program at the Center for American Progress, Alexandra Cawthorn Gaines. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. At ACGNDC is her Twitter handle. She's on social media where she is engaging, keep track of what she's talking about in her research. She's been joining us here on Reality Check. Alexandra, thanks for your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. So we have our weekly CAP Corners in conjunction with the Center for American Progress, always providing us with some great insights and research. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back on the other side. We'll continue to take your phone calls at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. And then in the noon hour, at the top of the noon hour, we'll be talking with Congressman Donald Payne Jr. He's supposed to be joining us for another session with the Congressional Black Caucus. So we have ongoing conversations with the Congressional Black Caucus. So that's typically at this time on Monday at the top of the noon hour. But in the meantime, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. Have an old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Pico will pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you a $75 rebate. That's right, $75. Plus, you could save as much as $150 a year on your energy bill by getting rid of it. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. Be sure your fridge or freezer is plugged in and working at time of pickup.
Show some love for your favorite neighborhood with Word Radio. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays now through August 20th from 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. Shining a light on Philadelphia's neighborhoods with a focus on neighborhood history, Philadelphia's freedom fighters, and community resources that are helping to shape the city's future. Mondays with the rapping professor Dr. Aaron Smith and Thursdays with Andrea Lawful Sanders. It's the Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour. Mondays and Thursdays 1 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com, the Word Radio app, and on Word TV via YouTube and Facebook. The Summer of Freedom Virtual Neighborhood Love Tour is sponsored by Wells Fargo and Pico. Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag onWURD. Be heard. Stay connected to Word Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. For more to listen in through your various digital devices. 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Also, I was seeing this on social media. Happy birthday, happy Earth Day to Mrs. Esther. She has turned 90. She's 90, and that's significant. That's a significant milestone. And looking good at 90, I'm told. One of our biggest fans and longtime loyal listeners here on WURD. So happy birthday to you, Mrs. Esther. So appreciate that. And and thanks so much for onWURD for making that known. Because I just saw that on Twitter, on the Twitter feed onWURD. So appreciate that. So love to see more birthdays as well. Let us know when your birthday is, and then we'll give you a nice little happy birthday, happy Earth Day shout out. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Maurice out of North Philly, who's calling for a Reality Check. Maurice, what's good?
Hey, brother. How's everything? Good morning.
All right, bro. Good. How you doing?
I got a few questions out of the statement. When you say define, I want to like to know, can you define what they mean by defunding the police? And when they defund the police, where did that money go?
Yeah.
The third question is, how does that money tie into? Do you understand how that money ties into affordable housing?
It's not clear at the moment. How that because when we're talking about defunding the police, I really do feel like, just in terms of messaging and optics, I feel like there should have been another term. I mean, I don't know, restructure the police, overhaul the police, but defunding. When you say defunding, it makes it sound not to me. I understand where people were coming from, the people who created that term. Because I understand like the details and the weeds of that conversation, and it's really just to shift funding, to transition funding that typically goes to a lot of police departments, particularly heavily funded police departments. Like in Chicago, for example, 40% of that city's budget, of the overall budget, goes into that police department. That's excessive, especially when you've got like still high violence on the places like the South Side of Chicago. Like obviously that's not working, right? Because they're not performing. So why are you giving them so much money? In Philly, 15%, traditionally 15% of the city's, but 15% of the city's budget goes to the Philadelphia Police Department. So this is interesting numbers there. But when you say defund, people will automatically think, oh, you mean eliminate? No, it's just to shift funding and to put it to better use. And so that's it's unclear, like the funding shifts that have been promised or that have been that are purported to have taken place in Philadelphia and in other cities. It's still not clear, like whether or not that funding is going to go into things. It should go into things like, for example, affordable housing, or like I've been arguing, common low-hanging fruit, common sense things like I'm seeing other cities do, like give people free AC units, give people free air conditioning units. Like New York City's making that investment. That's a serious issue because people are suffering, chronic illnesses are getting aggravated. Our elders, our seniors are suffering from intense heat waves. It's going to be 96 degrees, and it's going to be like a 3-digit heat index in Philly again today. So it makes no sense. Like, so that could have been something like ahead of, and this is something that's known throughout Philly. Okay, like there's these different stressors, socioeconomic stressors that we're aware of, and things that don't cost a terrible amount of money. Even the guy who fashions himself as the city council's fiscal watchdog, who is, very very rigid when it comes to the city's finances, Alan Dom, even he acknowledged, like, yeah, we need to get free air conditioners for people. So, like that's kind of stuff where that I would like to see.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah, go ahead, Maurice.
I gave you an article. Remember, I recorded an article to you July 19th, where it was an inquiry where it said Philadelphia corporations are funding the police. Now we back that article. Now you take that article there, and you go all the way back to Ida B. Wells' article in 1892.
Yeah.
Now, Ida B. Wells put about funding the police, where she was talking about instead of funding the police and why the black community was being taxed, because it was dealing with property as property owners and business owners acquiring wealth. So when you talk about accumulating wealth, you're talking about affordable housing. They don't want us to have them kind of housing and wealth. So it's intentionally defunded. So I like the model that L.A. is doing now, where L.A. mayor committed to taking $150 million from the police and putting $100 million towards what it's called the Community Reinvestment Act. And when you have the Community Reinvestment Act, been on the books for years, when you have the Community Reinvestment Act, then the community can get community benefit agreements.
Yeah.
So it's not really defunding the police. It's about putting money into the community that would create social, economic, and retail. Until we do that, we would never be able to close the wealth gap. Because
no, we won't.
The slave owners created wealth for over 400 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. The black enslaved never created anything. So the slave owners are still creating wealth. Why our gap? Last time the Consumer Report put out a report in 2016 that said a white medium income is $177,000 compared to a black house medium income at $17,000. So that's a huge wealth gap. And we can't close the wealth gap unless we do reinvestments back into the community. It's impossible. We can't work out the economic condition.
It's essentially, that's why we keep arguing for, I keep saying this, and frankly, I get a lot of pushback. It's a bit astounding. I mean, some of the pushback that I get when I start trying to delve into like deeper conversations about the type of commitments and investments that the corporate sector in Philadelphia is making to the community, particularly in times of crisis. So, and you're absolutely right. The Philadelphia Inquirer was talking about this earlier on. They had this, I think it was last week, where they were talking about this little known nonprofit that raises money for Philadelphia police officers, for a variety, and supporting them, supporting their families, et cetera, and companies like Wawa, Comcast, and others. And I get it. It's like if you're a company, if you're a multi-billion-dollar company that's based in a major city like Philadelphia, you want to make sure you're supportive of like public, on just a basic level, you're supportive of public safety agencies to ensure that they're providing the kind of security and protection you need as a multi-billion-dollar business. If I own a multi-billion-dollar business, I want security, right? And I want to make sure the security situation in the city is intact. But and so I think that that's a common sense thing. But on the other side of that, it's okay, but also a part of maintaining stability and security in a city that you're based in is kind of making like really robust investments in the community. You know, like the council member said earlier. I mean, he was even suggesting it, making those kinds of investments in like to grow black businesses and black employment in the city, in a city that's 44% black. That's common sense too. And so we're going to have to be making those demands. We're going to have to make those kinds of demands on the private sector, on the big institutional philanthropic sector that's always been thriving for hundreds of years in the city of Philadelphia. City of Philadelphia is one of the original cities in this country. There's old money. There's all kinds of money laying around. There's billions of dollars in endowments that all these major longtime universities are just sitting on. And annually, they may use 4 or 5% of it. You know, we need to make those demands on those institutions now, because they're also neighbors, they're residents, they're partners in the city. So the city's health is just as much in their best interest as it is in ours. We have to make that business case for them. So I completely agree with Maurice that it's not even a reinvestment, because it's like, what's the extent of the investments that they have in making all that time? So I think it's a good point. Thanks, Maurice. Thanks for calling. Thanks for making us aware of that. But yeah, it was a lot of people didn't realize that, but some good reporting in the Philadelphia Inquirer about that, and about the types of donations that companies were making. Some of the city's biggest companies were making to the Philadelphia Police Foundation, as it's called. And folks like Independence Blue Cross, Wawa, others, making, and so, a lot of protests have been putting pressure on the business community in the city to start pulling back on those donations. But, it wouldn't be such a problem. It wouldn't be an issue if, like, you were making similar levels of investment, or showing that you're making similar levels of investment in the community, like robust, muscular investments, investments that are proportional to the crises that the community is going through, and are proportional to the city's population as well, and really addressing that. And I think those entities have a big role to play, and not just, once again, I mean, since like a lot of folks in that space don't want to hear like the moral reasoning or want to hear how fair it is. It's just good business. I mean, it actually helps grow the economy, and it helps grow the bottom lines of everyone involved. And you also ensure that you have more stability, less chaos. You maintain social order when you make those kinds of investments. It's just on a basic level, it just makes sense. All right, we're heading into a break soon. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, just for your edification, for your reference as well. Folks are leaving comments in the Facebook Live section, and I appreciate that. Good morning to folks who were listening in. Lois Rubin Marks, good morning. Well, almost good afternoon to you, and good morning, good afternoon to Shalata C.A. Sankofa. Appreciate that. Arnetta Pierce, who's always watching from Arizona. Appreciate folks listening from around the country. Thank you, Arnetta Pierce. Lean Love asking question: what is the percentage of businesses owned by Hispanics, East Indians, and Asians versus Black Americans? I suspect you're talking about in the city of Philadelphia. I don't know. I don't have that data on me. I'd love to find out. I think it's a good question. And Lean Love, thanks for listening in as well. Lean Love saying Black people are suffering in business, not brown people. We have to stop saying Black and brown. Sometimes I think in certain pieces of the conversation, I think we do. Sometimes the focus is just Black people, and it's okay. It's okay. I know there are a lot of folks out there, like, goes back to that Public Enemy title, their album, Fear of a Black Planet. Like, sometimes it's okay to just, like, there are Black issues and Black problems. I do agree with that. I mean, there's times when it is like a Black-brown problem, and there are times when it's not a brown, it's just a Black problem. So, and let's just stick with talking about Black folks and how we're going to fix Black issues and Black people's problems. So thank you, Lean, for making that. But we do have to team up at times with other communities and our brown and our indigenous brethren and sistren, because they're going through some stuff too. And sometimes like we are kind of going through it all at the same time. But yes, black people getting hit the hardest on all those. I see those indicators every day. And 9 times out of 10, black people getting the hardest. And sometimes we just got to like say, hey, what are we doing about black folks? So I hear you on that. All right, let's take a break. I know that's controversial for some people, but to me, it shouldn't be. It just, every now and then, it's just, yeah, it is really just a black issue. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're speaking of black, we're going to engage our weekly conversations with the Congressional Black Caucus. Joining us this Monday for the first time is Congressman Donald Payne Jr., representing New Jersey, and he will join us very shortly after this break at the top of the noon hour here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So you just finished binge watching that entire TV series? Now it's time to binge listen at wordradio.com. Check out our archives of WURD on demand and listen to some of the most memorable moments from your favorite hosts. Word Radio on demand. Check it out right now at wordradio.com/podcasts.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
JD's Auto Body and Painting is hiring talent for the following positions. Assembler, preferably 2 to 3 years experience, able to tear down and reassemble all make and model cars. Painter, must have at least 5 years overall painting experience, including experience in water-based paint and able to prep cars for paint jobs. Auto Body Technician, looking for an A or B technician, must have at least 5 years experience repairing cars. Please send your resume to JD's Auto Body and Painting at Comcast.net. That's JDS Auto Body and Painting at Comcast.net, or call 215-848-5949 for more details. JD's Auto Body and Painting is an equal opportunity employer.
So many times we say to ourselves, I need to make a difference. Well, your chance is here. Center in the Park is holding a virtual volunteer event Thursday, September 10th, 2020 from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. Advocate for those who can't, support those who can, and ensure all long-term care residents live with dignity and respect. Register for the Ombudsman event at cipombudsman.eventbrite.com. We all feel better when we do something that matters and when we do something with purpose.
This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We are scheduled to talk with Congressman Donald Payne Jr., who represents New Jersey's 10th Congressional District. That's parts of North Jersey, Newark, namely, and other places. He's at payne.house.gov for more information on him. He's supposed to be joining us. He's scheduled to join us at the top of this noon hour for our weekly conversations with the Congressional Black Caucus. 215, in the meantime, we'll just keep the phone lines open until we get them on. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines open until we have Congressman Donald Payne join us. Speaking of congresspersons, we also, you heard it here first on Reality Check, WRD, Congressman Brendan Boyle announcing that he will sign on to, he will co-sponsor H.R. 40, which is a House resolution creating a commission to study and assess reparations for African Americans. So that's to officially initiate, trigger that conversation to explore or assess reparations for African Americans. That's H.R. 40. And he is not co-sponsored right now, but he just committed to doing that. He committed to doing that fairly emphatically on this program not too long ago, saying, quote, it will go from 140 co-sponsors to now 141. And Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee wants that to be at 150 co-sponsors before she takes it to the floor, to the House floor for a vote, for a full vote. So just to get this straight now, I hope people understand. Just because it'll pass out, it will be a tremendous symbolic milestone if H.R. 40 passes the U.S. House of Representatives, which is under control of Democrats. So that's going to happen. If it had been under control of Republicans, it would not have happened. It's under control of congressional Democrats and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and so the path is there for it to pass the House. But let me just make sure people understand their civics, right? It has to go to the Senate, and it has to pass the Senate. And then in order for something to pass or to be approved finally into law, it has to go to the president's desk, and the president has to sign it. So folks have to understand, reparations folks, particularly some folks out there, like the few folks I talk to say, I ain't voting because, you know, they ain't doing nothing about reparations. Okay, but you do understand civics, right? You do understand that based on the current political composition, nothing's going to pass into law dealing with reparations at all, ever, until you have a dramatic change in the political composition of Capitol Hill and Washington, D.C. So I hope you all understand that. So it's going to go to the Senate after it passes the House, and it's just going to sit there with the current Senate Majority Leader. As long as Republicans are in charge, they're not anything dealing with reparations or dealing with even the slightest hint of a benefit or something that even the slightest hint of a leg up for black folks, it will not pass that current Senate. It's not until you dramatically change the Senate, you change the leadership, the political composition of the Senate. That can happen this year in 2020 if people get out and vote. So that's where you finally, it's all for, it really is all for naught to go through all this trouble and to have all this conversation and to put all that kind of political pressure, and you're not having any kind of realistic pass. And I'm here to tell you, like, if the current president gets a second term and Republicans remain in power in the Senate, then your chances go from remote, in terms of the passing into law of H.R. 40, your chances of passage go from remote to nil. Like, it just won't happen. It probably won't happen for, it won't happen for like at least like for a very long time, at the very least. It's a possibility it may not happen ever, because the type of damage, the type of chaos that will be unleashed in a second Trump presidency will be unlike anything we've seen in American history. It will be very destructive. And so I've been talking to a lot of smart people who are just on pins and needles, including myself, between now and November, and are mapping out those scenarios as far as like a second Trump presidency. Reparations just will not happen. It won't happen until there is a change in the political. Now you're seeing a change. You're actually seeing congressional Democrats who are like, hey, we're going to pass this thing. And it's going to pass in the House. And it's just going to sit on the Senate Majority Leader's desk. Probably won't go anywhere else until you have, there should be pressure put on, there should be a conversation with current Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden to see, hey, if you become president, would you sign off on this law? Right? Particularly if you have the Senate to do it with, because he's going to need a Senate to get that bill to him. He's going to need a Democratic Party-led Senate in order to get that bill to him. If you have Biden in the White House, but then you still got Mitch McConnell in the Senate leadership, that bill's just going to sit on Mitch McConnell's desk. I'm telling you, like, I could put all kinds of money on that and laugh all the way to the bank on that prediction. I will not laugh, but really like cry all the way to the bank, because it'd be real tragic for him to continue to hold important bills like that, like other ones as well. So I'm just making sure that people they know exactly how this thing works, because a lot of people don't know the civics. They don't understand how. I saw this very prominent social media activist, one of the most prominent black social media activists online, who ran for mayor of a major city, did not know that House members ran every 2 years. It was the funniest thing to watch. I saw that just last week on Twitter. So I'm like, these are people who put themselves in these positions to have these conversations and don't know basic civics. Like, you have to understand how this thing works. Let me go to Pat out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Pat?
Hey, good afternoon, Charles. Nice Monday.
Hey, good
I'm
afternoon.
so happy to hear your voice. I just want to let you know that I subscribe to the B Note, which I am enjoying.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to congratulate WRD for pushing the census. I would like to say that I am a census volunteer, and I was out this weekend putting out some information, some door hangers and some yard signs, and I was in neighborhoods that I was just, it brought me to tears to see some of our elders suffering. I just can't believe how, you know, in our neighborhoods we are allowing our elders to be so scared that they don't even want to open their doors. I was in a gentleman's house where he had boards on his windows because he's scared of being shot, a 90-year-old gentleman. I mean, I just was just unbelievable. So I'm saying this to say we really need to keep an eye on our elders. It goes back to where you were talking about free air conditioning and things like that we should be providing for people. And during this hot weather, I'm thinking about this gentleman whose house I was in who had boards up against his windows. And I said to him, you have no air coming in here. And he said he'd rather be alive and worry about the air later on. I mean, it just broke my heart. I was just, it really bothered me. So I'm just encouraging people to check on your elderly, make sure, you know, that they're safe, and you know, encourage them to come out, sit on the porch, you know, get some air, because it's really, really sad. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe. And not only him, this was going on throughout this neighborhood where we were canvassing. Elder people were, I think because they think we were working for the census, we were government. So they were telling us things that, you know, was just unbelievable. I don't even want to repeat some of them, but I just want people to, you know, make sure that your neighbors are okay. It's real important during these hot weather times. And thank you for letting me share that. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Pat. And thank you for that work. Thank you for that census work, because that's real crucial. You know, it's like the three things that we have to do this year in 2020. I said this at the top of the year before the pandemic, and it still stands. It's three important, crucial things that you have to do, must-dos for 2020. So, like, this is your to-do list. This is everyone's to-do list, particularly the Black community in 2020. And Pat's doing some of that work now. But one, well, obviously, you have to file your taxes, and so that time has passed. And so, you know, if you hadn't filed your taxes, you better get to it, snap. But you got to file taxes, like, just got to do that. We have to vote. Everyone has got to be out and vote. Please get registered, and please, if you are already registered, get ready to vote. I don't care what your circumstances are. If you are able-bodied and you have already requested a mail-in ballot, or you have the ability to do so, and you have the ability to drop that mail-in ballot in a box, or you can go to one of the limited open polling precincts throughout the city of Philadelphia or anywhere in this country on November 3rd, please do it. It is a free activity. All right, I see more folks rushing. During the pandemic, we've actually seen signs or scenes of people rushing to get, like, the latest sneaker that dropped. That is not a free activity. You got to pay, like, you know, a couple $100s or more for that activity. Voting is free, and it's not that much of a hassle. You know, you feel very fulfilled, and you feel like you made some kind of contribution on some level. It's not the end-all, be-all. There's still a lot of other work to do, but that's the big first step. So you got to file your tax, you got to vote, and you have to take that census if you have not done it already. And, you know, you'll be making the jobs of folks very committed, concerned citizens like Pat, you make that much easier. But also, you make life easier for you, for your household, and for your community around you, your neighborhood. You make that much easier because more resources, that's how they determine how much federal funding will get dedicated to your community, to your neighborhood. So the fewer Black people that take the census means the fewer Black folks that are counted, which means the federal government will just say, oh, well, it's fewer Black folks in 2020 than it was in 2010, so we don't have to give Black people as much money. And, oh, yeah, don't think that that won't influence conversations around reparations. So you better get counted, especially y'all reparations folks out there who want reparations. Like, you know, like if you want there to be a determination to have federal funding, which is what reparations is going to come from if you want reparations, you got to take the census. You got to vote. You got to take the census. You got to participate on a very basic level in terms of if you are residents. If you are residents of like this place, you got to just participate on basic levels in order to make some of those demands, some of those policy demands that you're making in order to make those move. It's as simple as that. 215-634-80. I'm not sure exactly what happened to Congressman Donald Payne. So Congressman Donald Payne Jr., not sure. So I guess we'll have to get him next time. I guess something came up. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We'll just keep the phone lines open. Also, we have Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, who's going to be coming up next here on Reality Check. She's with Healthcare Ready, so we'll be talking about more, emergency preparedness during times of pandemic. In the meantime, we'll just keep the phone lines open because I'm not, based on the time right now, it doesn't seem like we're going to get Congressman Donald Payne Jr. So must be some stuff happening on his schedule. So we'll get him back at a later point. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. The latest that we do have on federal unemployment payments is a proposal. I mean, at least what we're hearing now, Senate Republicans are proposing cutting the supplemental federal unemployment benefit down to $200 per week, down from the $600 per week that people were getting used to. So that's the latest we're getting from Capitol Hill right now. Let me go to Celeste out of Center City, who's calling in for a Reality Check. Celeste?
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly to begin with, I want to thank you for all your information this morning. And, of course, I always get so much information from you.
Okay, thank you.
But, you're welcome. This morning it seemed to be even more information of importance than even usual. I don't know. But it really was fantabulous. Actually, I called with a question. Mm-hmm. Am I correct that I can go online to do my census?
Yes, yes, you can do that. So have you gone to census.gov to get?
No, not yet.
Okay, go to census.gov for more information on that about accessing the census. I took it much earlier on, and so the way they were doing it online was you would receive I should have asked. I wish we had Pat on here still. I'm not sure if things have changed because of pandemic, but there is and you should look in your mail because there might be some final reminder postcards that might have some kind of digital ID on it for you to take your census online. So you can take it by phone, you can take it online, or there might be a limited number of folks like Pat out of West Philly who just called in who are going out knocking door to door.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. I'll check. I live in an apartment building, so of course I don't get to knock on the door.
Right.
When I lived in the house previously, I got to knock on the door.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much. I'll go online.
Yeah. So go to what you want to do is go to 2020. So real quick, 2020 census.gov. And that's how you can respond, and you can you can respond online, by phone, and also there's a paper questionnaire, that was already mailed. You may already have that in hand, but if you don't, there is going to be a follow-up email a follow-up mail with instructions because there are about 35 million households that haven't responded yet. So they already announced that, and that postcard is I think it's the final reminder for folks for taking the census, and then they're going to do follow-up. I think they're going to be follow-up visits from census takers in mid-August that you should be expecting. But the online piece should flow rather smoothly. Go to 2020census.gov for more information on that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do it today. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, Celeste. And hopefully I'll encourage other people to do. Once again, the three major things you have to do in 2020. You have to do it. It's mandatory. Can't get out of it. I'm making it is mandatory. File your taxes, which that already happened. So it happened about a couple weeks ago. You had the deadline was July 15th. File your taxes, vote, take the census. 3 essential things, so 3 essential activities for 2020. Get it done. Get it done. So I sounds like I'm real encouraged when folks like Pat and then Celeste out of Center City are getting that done. So I appreciate that. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. So once again, we're hearing the latest from Capitol Hill. This is the latest according to reports out of sources telling Bloomberg that supplemental unemployment benefits, federal unemployment benefits, could go down from $600 per week to $200 per week. Until states are able to create a system that will provide 70% of a laid-off worker's previous pay. So it would be a 2-month transition, and that would allow states to apply for a waiver for up to 2 additional months if they can't implement the new calculations. So they're making this a lot more complicated than it needs to be, and a lot less robust, a lot more cruel. By essentially dramatically cutting the federal unemployment benefit down from $1,200 a month on average to just $800. So cutting that in half, cutting that federal unemployment benefit in half. So, and that's just because there's a lot of false information that's being peddled on Capitol Hill from very smart people. Aligned with Republicans, and they keep saying that expanded unemployment benefits, those $600 federal unemployment benefits, are actually discouraging people from finding work. Because again, there's very authoritative data. It just came out last month from the Federal Reserve, from the Chicago Federal Reserve itself, that showed that actually people on we just heard Congressman Donald Payne Jr. couldn't make it. There's a commemoration for Congressman John Lewis that is happening today. There's another commemoration that's happening for the late Congressman John Lewis. So there'll be a number of observances. So he couldn't make it today. So as a result of that commemoration. So maybe we'll get him at some point. I know people have been watching some of the action or activity that's been taking place, including John Lewis being carried by horse carriage across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, and Selma, Alabama, that happening as well this weekend. So those commemorations are going to continue to take place. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines will remain open in case you have questions for Nicolette Lewis Saint. That's going to be coming up next here on Reality Check. Go to healthcareready.org for more information on that. So we're going to be talking with her about emergency preparedness during pandemic and also heat waves as well. So there's a lot of need for preparedness for that too. Here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the Source lineup on Word Radio. Mondays, get ready for the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith. On Tuesdays, it's Andrea Lawful Sanders. Then on Wednesdays, it's the Black Women's Leadership Council. On Thursdays, it's a second helping of Andrea Lawful Sanders. And on Fridays, it's Tiffany Bacon. Don't miss the Source. Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. and Fridays, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. Exclusively on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app. This is Word Radio, independent black media.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Listen up, Word seniors. Make sure to listen to Wake Up with Word this week of July 27th for the Dedicated Senior Medical Center Trivia Contest. Dedicated Senior Medical Centers officially opened their new South Philadelphia location at 330 West Oregon Avenue in South Philadelphia. Call 267-338-3411 to schedule your appointment for a center visit. Again, call 267-338-3411 to visit Dedicated Senior Medical Center's new South Philadelphia location.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 on WordRadio.com, Word TV, Word app as well. Going into our weekly conversations about emergency preparedness and how to navigate pandemic, among other things and other crises that just keep popping up. And 2020 has just been that kind of year. So to try to prepare you for that, I'll give you some perspective and some context. We've been bringing on every week Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, who is Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. Go to healthcareready.org for more information, resources, and tips as well. She joins us, Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, by phone right now. How are you doing?
Hey there. I'm hanging in there. How are you?
All right. Doing good. Hanging in there to try and stay cool. We'll get to that because I'm real curious to get your thoughts on heat waves. I just wanted to ask you real quick, as far we're still in the pandemic, real deep and thick in it still, and I wonder, there's this new strain. A lot of people, there was some alerts over the weekend about like this new strain of COVID-19 that's popping up, and I think they had to shut down, or they're evacuating a major city in Vietnam, Da Nang. And I'm wondering, which I think Da Nang was the site of the first major battle of the Vietnam War between U.S. forces and North Vietnamese, but Da Nang being evacuated as we speak, about 100,000 people. What do you know about this new strain, Nicolette, and what does it mean? What does it portend for the United States?
Sure. So right now I know very little, and when I say what I know about a strain, I am looking for sequences of that strain and other details around the molecular biology of that virus. So still learning a lot about that. It is not uncommon for viruses to mutate, especially as they are spreading across the population. And if you have ever played with a globe, as I think most of us did back in the days when we had globes in our houses and encyclopedias.
Yep.
You
I remember those days.
You remember those, right?
I remember those days fondly.
You put your finger on the globe and you start spinning it, right?
Yes, I so fondly. Thank you for that flashback. Thank you. Go ahead.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. I miss encyclopedias. I miss that. But go ahead.
So, I still have encyclopedias, but
nice.
Some things are never going to change. But it's when you think about the way a globe moves, viruses move much in that way, right? That's why the flu vaccine, we look at what happens in Asia to predict what we're going to need for the upcoming flu season. And so we're seeing that rotation around the globe, and we're seeing that the virus is mutating as it's moving. That's not uncommon. That's what we've expected. That is what viruses do in order to survive. What we need to understand about this mutation is does it change how infectious it is? Does it change the pathogenicity of the virus? So does it change characteristics that make it more infectious, that make it the disease course more dangerous? But then also thinking a little bit down the pipeline, does it change how we are developing vaccines and therapeutics to actually stop the spread of COVID-19? And so that's what, for me, that's what I'm looking to understand. It's not necessarily cause for alarm. It's cause for reminder that this is still an ongoing threat and that we are still working to curb the spread of this virus. But that's the pertinent information that will determine what it actually means to have a mutated strain that is infecting people is going to be that measure of what it actually means in terms of how fundamentally it changes the virus. Thank you for that. That kind of adds some understanding and because I know people were rather alarmed just saying, anything about a new mutation. Just the word mutation. Right. it's a very frightening word. It's exactly that. And I think it's all the sci-fi that we watched as children Ghostbusters on down. I'm just going to keep throwing in the throwback reminders. But,
right.
Mutations sound scary. Mutations don't have to be scary, though, because sometimes viruses mutate in ways that make it weaker. Part of what is important with this one, and I'm trying to understand a little bit more about this, because based on the reporting I've seen, it may not be that it's a new strain. It may be that the strain had not been previously detected in that country. And so that's something different than it being an actual new strain of virus versus it just not being a strain of virus that's been previously recognized in that part of Vietnam. But also because this was a new resurgence of the outbreak in Vietnam since I want to say April or May. So that was the other cause for concern. So it's not yet clear to me that it's necessarily a new strain entirely. But remember, when it comes to mutations, things can mutate in ways that make it weaker. It can mutate in ways that make it stronger. And so mutation by itself is not a bad thing. We need to understand what those mutations are actually doing to the virus.
And that may be commentary on, how that's being handled right now in Vietnam. That could be commentary on how Vietnam has been relatively effective in containing the virus in its country. They've done, from what I've gathered and from reports and experts I've talked to, they've done a magnificent job of keeping coronavirus contained. Is that also part of it? They're just being abundantly cautious. They're already prepared. They've got great protocols in place. They've got the kind of leadership in place that's just been handling the situation. They've been managing it. Probably if we had seen a new strain in the United States, I'm like, I don't know. It's just a roll of the dice. Not so much in a place like Vietnam.
And I think that's part of it. So while travel has resumed and some parts of the way of life in Vietnam have resumed, it's inevitable that there were going to be new cases. Part of the reason the alarm was there is largely because the number of cases since April has, I think it's been holding at zero. So this is the first resurgence. Trying to do that contact tracing of understanding the source of those cases becomes incredibly important because, to your point, they have been doing quite a great job with contact tracing and being able to really, manage the threat of the virus and the consistent spread. But again, remember something about Vietnam that's incredibly important. What we're seeing with Vietnam's ability to combat coronavirus is a result of investments in healthcare infrastructure and health security, everything from the global health security agenda, which was led by the United States, to actually build that kind of capacity to be able to prevent, detect, and respond, all the way to what's happened at the NGO side in Vietnam and countries like Vietnam, which has been bolstering their health system's capacity. And so what we're seeing is that those investments have paid off, and that's what we're going to continue to see during this response.
Yeah. I never thought I'd hear myself say this throughout my lifetime, but I'm hoping it stays under control there, because once this is all done, I want to go to Vietnam. Because I was watching this show on Netflix, Somebody Feed Phil, which is one of those shows you binge on Netflix, and he went to Vietnam in one of the episodes, and it just seems like a wonderful place now. It's not, obviously it's Vietnam, you conjure up images of the war very destructive war that took place there, that started with the French before the Americans came in, but it's a little bit of side commentary, but I was like, wow, I was like, I want to go to Vietnam. I'm going to go hang out in Vietnam, just do a little travel over there, but that's good but to your point, it's good to see how, once again, when a country or when a government makes those kinds of investments in health infrastructure, how that all works. 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open in case you have questions for Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, Executive Director of Healthcare Ready. Calvin out of Mount Airy has a question for Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint here on Reality Check. Calvin, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. Good afternoon to you and your guests. I just had a comment. This whole I think this coronavirus. I think it's going to be with us for a while in terms of having to wear these masks. And also the fact that they're saying there's going to be a vaccine in the fall. I don't know. I'm kind of cynical, So, like, who's to say you take this vaccine and you don't get the virus? You know, because usually when they had these vaccines out initially, there's always some kind of problem with it. But like in the second batch, once the second batch comes around and they come in and they do these corrections, and it would maybe be more amenable to people, you know. But it's just that, you know, the thing is, like you had mentioned earlier, like Vietnam, I was there a long time ago when I was in the service. Also, so like places like Taiwan, where they do a lot of research and development, you know, so these countries are really kind of on board in terms of basically helping people and services and what have you for people in their communities. But, you know, we certainly could take a lesson from them, you know, with that.
Yeah.
But also here in this country, you know, like I know Solomon always talks about toxic freedom, you know, people that don't want to wear no mask. I was looking at the news over the weekend up in Philly, like, you know, they're having these social gatherings, 300 or 400 people. No one has a mask on.
Yeah.
So, you know, someone calls the police to come along and they break it up. But, you know, these people they're like super spreaders.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, I mean, I just don't understand. I really don't understand it.
Yeah.
You know, but I just wanted to just say that. And thanks for taking my call.
You know, I thank you for that comment. Also, that, you know, you got some questions in there layered in there too, Calvin. Nicola, you want to respond to that too? I mean, just, you know, once again, underscoring the importance of mask wearing and how effective that is.
So mask wearing, based on what we know about the virus right now, and I want to, you know, it's not as pithy, but it's not just a mask, it's a facial covering. It doesn't have to be a mask. It just has to be a facial covering of some sort that covers both your nostrils and your mouth. So that can be a cloth-based covering with at least 2 layers of fabric. That, you know, can be these, you know, the coverings that rest on your neck and go up. But it can be a range of things. It doesn't have to just be a mask. However, what we know based on how the virus spreads at this point, because of droplets, it is effective. There's no question that it is effective. Now, whether or not people are wearing masks is a different question, and has been a point of frustration for me and I think many others in the public health community. But we do know that it is effective because it prevents those droplets from being able to get into your nose and your mouth where you can get infected. So it's not just enough for you to wear a mask. It's important for the other person to wear a mask as well. And we've also seen that is a critical part of it, is that those facial coverings being worn when in small indoor spaces where there are other people who have not been in your household or when outdoors is important. It is a point of frustration seeing the barbecues and the other outings and gatherings where people are getting together and they're not taking those precautions. It is frustrating because that is where it continues to spread. So we do know that we have a lot of work to do on that side. He asked a question about vaccines, too. Do you want me to take that?
Please, yeah.
Sure. So on the vaccine side, there are a lot of different products that are currently being explored right now, and a lot of candidates that are in either phase 2 or phase 3 trials. It is premature for us to have a conversation about the details of the vaccine because we don't know which vaccine or vaccines will actually be FDA-approved products, right? So we're still doing trials. There's still a lot to learn. One of the things that's important to know, though, about these vaccines is that many of these vaccines, if you think about a vaccine as basically having a backbone and then the parts of the vaccine that are new, the backbones are not new. And so there is a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of science, and the backbones of a lot of these products are the backbones of other vaccines that have been tested, and not just tested, but used repeatedly in millions of people. And so that's one of the advantages to a lot of the technologies that are being explored right now in phase 2 and phase 3 trials, is that they are novel vaccines, but their backbones are not novel. And so that's an opportunity for us to be able to use all of that data and information about the other vaccines that use those similar backbones to make sure that we are looking at safety and efficacy data. So we've got a lot of ways to go, but there are a lot of different technologies and a lot of different strategies right now being explored, both on vaccines and therapeutics. So it's too soon for us to say this is the one that's going to work, or this is who should get it first, or, other details about the potential risks associated, because depending on the vaccine, we may have a lot of years of data about the backbone, and that those years of data about the safety and efficacy of those backbones that help influence how we're able to use those vaccines today.
Right. The phone line is still open in case you have a question for Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Nicolette, you given some thought to, the intersection of the upcoming elections and also the pandemic we're in, COVID-19. What could change in terms of COVID-19 response or the COVID-19 climate? What could change with the new administration?
Sure. So I think there's a lot to pay attention to as to why this election and other elections, local elections, really matter. As we've seen, the states have had a lot of control over the coordination and their responses, and so local elections matter from that vantage point, making sure that local state houses are populated with the right people who understand the role of the state. Governor elections really matter. But at the federal level, a lot of these questions about vaccine distribution, the next phases of the response, they're going to be worked out by whoever is in the White House in January. And so to think that, the trajectory of the response or the current path of the response is a foregone conclusion is a mistake, because there are a lot of elements of the next phases of the response, everything from the guidance that's needed for states, what information we'll have, as a lot of school districts, for example, are moving their decision about the education to doing virtual education for the fall and then making a determination in January. The vaccines, as we're getting more vaccines available, a lot of that data is going to be coming out in the fall to be making decisions in January. So we're going to be in a position where there's a lot of the pandemic response that'll be ahead of us. And so whoever is in the White House and whatever administration is driving the response is going to be the one that's responsible for making a lot of these decisions at the federal level. So it is important to think about this as a component of how we continue this response, how we make sure that we have leadership that's in place to be able to navigate these complexities, and not just within the presidency, but also thinking about their cabinet and the other components of that administration, because there are going to be a lot of questions, even how the federal administration is working with the states. Those are all different pieces of what we need to understand.
Got it. We have another phone call from Saladin out of Germantown, who's calling in for a reality check. Saladin.
Yes, I would just like to mention, especially black people, we shouldn't trust no vaccination. After the TZ experiment, the polio vaccine, 10 years later, people got cancer. The MMR vaccinations, people are getting autism because they got formaldehyde in them, antifreeze.
So wait a second, Saladin. I have to ask. So wait, two questions here I have to ask. So what should people do in terms of basic public health defense? Because you before your kids can go into a school, you've got to get your standard immunizations every year. Like that's a standard thing for all kids.
No, you don't.
And so that works as you do. If you got to go into especially when you got to go to any school, public or private. In what case? If you're homeschooled?
No, there's exemptions. Each state has exemptions. You have
but that's not those aren't as widespread though. Yeah, there might be exemptions, but even those exemptions are controversial, and there are a lot of situations. But that's not the standard. The standard is, for the most part, vast majority, and Nicolette can jump into this conversation and as far as this is concerned. But I mean, the standard is, particularly in major cities like a Philadelphia, you got to get your kids immunized before they can just walk into or waltz into a school building. But what that does is that, and why I'm being so strong in my response here, is that you need a basic layer of public health protection, or it's complete, it's going to be complete bacterial anarchy.
No.
People just going to get, yes it is. I mean, so anyway, go ahead, Nicolette, if you want to jump in on that.
I do, because I think it's important to make sure that we are, especially in a platform as important as this one, pushing accurate information about where we are in science and how we are protecting people, especially people of color, especially Black people in 2020, and understanding that, Tuskegee, for example, is an example of what happens when we did not have those protections in place. But it is a mistake to say that where we are in public health and where the regulatory controls are that protect people, especially people of color, are today is where it was then. That is simply not true. And so where we come to understand how clinical trials are conducted, how we protect people who are in clinical trials, how we ensure that diversity in clinical trials is an important part of making sure that we are testing products before they are being used in people to make sure that they are safe in those populations. And that is of critical importance, especially to Black people. And so those protections are in place, and people like me understand how important it is to make sure that those protections are in place. So for us to treat Tuskegee not as a critical and crucial moment that pivoted how we are managing clinical trials, but to instead treat it as how we are currently managing clinical trials is untrue. And also, I've heard a lot of this language about formaldehyde and antifreeze and other chemicals being in vaccines. That is misinformation. And so we have to be able to, in spaces like this, lovingly address it, but call it for what it is, which is misinformation. Formaldehyde, as most people are thinking about formaldehyde that they would pick up at Home Depot or other places, is not it. There are preservatives that are in vaccines that are in trace amounts to be able to ensure that it maintains the safety and quality that needs to be maintained over time. But to say that there's formaldehyde and antifreeze as if there are household chemicals that are being infused with the intent of making people sick or harming people of color is simply not true.
Yeah, no, thanks, Saladin. We actually have to wrap. Saladin, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling in. I'm not going to entertain any vaccine conversation. This is one of the rules, and I've had a couple of clashes in the past with folks. It's just dangerous, particularly when it's built on misinformation, and we're probably going to have more conversations about it, and some later point, maybe, and open up the phone lines, get an expert on, maybe bring you back on, Nicolette, next week to talk a little bit more about it. It's just very dangerous. It's putting people at risk in a really big way. And but I have to wrap you. Because we ran up on time. Nicolette, but thank you for that response. Saladin, however, thank you for listening, and thank you for calling in and giving us some perspective on what folks are talking about in that space. But Dr. Nicolette Lewis-Saint, Executive Director, Healthcare Ready, healthcareready.org for more information, at DRN Lewis-Saint, if you like to keep track of what she's doing on social media where she's engaged. Nicolette, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Hey, you do the same. Take care. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com. Support independent Black media and join the onWURD movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
Part-time job, full-time hustle, all-time Shiro to all of us. You nurture, we listen. You teach, we thrive. You lift our spirits, but we've got to lay down the truth. It's time for you, our Shiro, to stretch for the stars. Start saving more for retirement now, so you can feel prepared and live your life to the fullest. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
A message brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the mattress man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio and WordRadio.com.
All right, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. I'm more than happy to, continue that conversation on how important it is to have, like, when you're in a massive civil society like the one that we live in, vaccinations, immunizations is just essential. Like, if you don't have that, it's just, you just heard, like, Dr. Lewis Saint, for example, talk about places, and then we had the caller a little bit earlier, I think it was Calvin out of Mount Airy, you talk about countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, South Korea, they are homogenous countries. One of the reasons they work is because they're not dealing with the level of disparity and inequity and racial discrimination that goes on in a very highly multicultural place, a highly heterogeneous place like the United States. And, racism, frankly, has what's really shattered an effective pandemic response in the United States. Racism at the very highest levels of the federal government. So, and they're not dealing with those kinds of issues in those places. But that said, they are making, it's just like she said, when you make those kinds of necessary investments in healthcare infrastructure and healthcare security, one of the elements of healthcare security, I know this is someone who's worked in the public health response, the emergency preparedness response. I've been at actual events and had to work on, work at high levels, state, local response, and coordinating a bit with the feds in terms of a public health emergency, a public health crisis. And one of those elements, one of the key essential elements of any public health or emergency response, especially when there's an outbreak, is vaccinations. It's immunizations, full stop. That's just what keeps everyone protected. So, you can't have people not taking vaccines and threatening themselves, threatening their households, threatening their kids. And, those few people out there who sign on to those religious exemptions, they end up regretting it in the end. And we've seen many cases like that where, like, they opt out, the few people out there who opt out of a key vaccine, and then, it ends up being like misery and heartbreak in the end. Always does. People end up being real sorry and end up regretting in the end, particularly when they get afflicted with something that could have been easily preventable had they gotten over, their misinformed, baseless ideological sensitivities about vaccines. And then they feel real stupid in the end if they sitting up in a hospital bed dying from something that they could have got immunized for, or worse, the kids, their young kids, don't get to grow up for the rest of their life or can't see the years in front of them because they didn't do something as simple as just take a vaccine and just get over, like, misinformed, baseless political beliefs and ideology. Like the conspiracy theories, the infodemic, just waiting and, happily waiting, and all these lies and misinformation and conspiracy theories. This stuff is killing us. It's killing us as a community, and it's killing us as a country, instead of us coming up with, like, plans and response. It's like, okay, so if people aren't taking vaccines, then what do people do in terms of basic public health protection, in terms of making sure that things don't spread and making sure people don't get sick? Especially in the 21st century, we're supposed to be, like, way ahead of that. We're supposed to be better than that. Like, folks you want to sit up on social media all day. You want to sit up using all these sophisticated technological devices, but you don't want to take vaccine? Like, what kind of, like, insanity is that? Like, you want to sit up there and spread lies on Facebook. You want to use some of the most sophisticated communications technology in the world that this world right now has to offer. Right? You want to do that. You want to use that kind of innovation and advancement, but you don't want to use basic medical innovation and science advancement, that actually is supposed to, the whole purpose of it, the whole mission of it, is to keep people alive and to improve quality of life. Okay, is to do things like eradicate, and I do understand there's a lot, there are existing politics, there are existing inequities and disparities, and there's a whole lot of games that are being played in which, from the price of pharmaceuticals, I'm worried about the distribution of those vaccines, when they finally do get a vaccine going for coronavirus, like who's going to get it? I'm worried about the distribution of ventilators. When people get sick and the truth, we're not having that conversation. Like, what's that conversation about if you do get severely sick with coronavirus and you go up and you're black and you go up in a hospital and then, suddenly, I mean, we still haven't really grasped our heads around that and getting the sufficient data to understand, like, how are black people being getting treated as they've been getting coronavirus or getting severe cases of coronavirus. It's like we have actual facts. We have actual facts. Once again, let me repeat, we have actual facts and conditions on the ground, things that we see ourselves and our people and our community and our children and our grandparents and everyone else going through. We see the facts, we see the conditions on the ground, things that are actually happening, and we keep we keep opening up these or venturing down the rabbit holes of conspiracy theories while we're not having effective and intellectual and healthy conversations about what are we going to do about what's going on now, about the conditions on the ground. What's your plan, fam? Because I mean, bro can come on here and talk about how y'all should be taking the vaccines. Okay, well, what's your plan? Like, what is it? Like, you got did you bake something up in a lab in a garage that has worked and you've done an actual full-blown medical trial with subjects and you've had other scientists look at it and it works? Like, what is the plan? What's your framework? What's your blueprint to get everyone healthy or to have everyone achieve a better quality of life or to have people not suffering so much from chronic diseases? Like, what's your plan? Because I wanted to hear the plan. And if you have a plan, have you done everything you need to do to assess it to make sure that plan's work? Have you tested it? Does the data bear out for it? It's dangerous talk. I'm not going to entertain it. I'm not going to entertain conspiracy theories like don't take vaccine or dumb, let me catch myself before I say something unfamily friendly on air, or really insane, ridiculous, disproven conspiracy theories about 5G spreading cancer, or spreading coronavirus. That will not be, I'm not going to entertain that. No self-respecting journalist or talk show host or anybody should entertain that just for the sake of encouraging open conversation, especially if it's dangerous, baseless, misinformed, untruths, lies, especially that. I know there's some people out there who would be like, okay, well, I don't agree with it, but it's a different perspective, and so we have to introduce. No. I've seen the dangers of that play out. I've seen it firsthand. I've been in those trenches. It's dangerous. It's like the dude, people were standing up on a hill. Even some black people were on a hill dying for this dude, senator out of Arkansas, Tom Cotton, when he wrote a couple of months ago this op-ed in the New York Times about, we should use federal troops, military troops, to go into cities and suppress the protests, suppress the riots. And people were like, well, he has a right, freedom of speech, to write that, And now look what he did over the weekend. Look what he did. Now he's saying that, slavery was a necessary evil. There's but y'all wanted to die on that hill, because it's free speech, and we need different perspectives. And no, free speech has even its limitations, free speech within the parameters of responsibility, free speech that doesn't harm or injure other people. And that kind of talk, it harms, it injures, it threatens, it kills other people. It kills black people. Yes, Tuskegee did take place. Yes, there were, over the years, there have been issues, and we've caught that, right? There have been issues with black people being experimented on or black people not being treated correctly by healthcare infrastructure, by healthcare professionals. And that's what we do. You identify that, and then you figure out robust public policy responses to it. Right, you figure out ways that we can get more. I mean, we had a brother who's come on occasionally here. He's a social epidemiologist at Kevin Ahmad Jenkins over at University of Penn, and he keeps telling people that he's more of us need to get into the medical research profession, that's what starts to mitigate that and reduce that and helps us as a community, as a people, effectively respond to it. When we get into the medical research profession, not just doctors, medical research, we're the ones who are producing or doing the research to produce those kinds of medicines and vaccine. When we're sitting on the boards of those pharmaceutical companies or those government or non-governmental institutions, they have to create boards. We just heard Nicolette talk about that last week. They have to create boards that they have to have civilian, and they also have like clauses when those boards are formed to create civilian positions for like diverse Black and brown folks to sit on those boards to oversee the creation or the innovation of those pharmaceuticals. So that's the kind of information we need to get, that kind of information, more of that out there to understand. We need to be more in the space to understand how that game is played, and to understand that as these medicines and these vaccines and everything else are being developed, that we mitigate or we reduce the kind of damage or harm that's done to us. That's what we need to focus on. That's the conversation we need to have. Anyway, that wraps this Monday edition of Rap. So, I mean, there's folks out there, there's a few folks out there probably going to call me a fool. And no, I know the whole conversation. I'm very familiar with it. I'm extremely familiar with it, the ins and outs of it. But bottom line, at the end of the day, it's dangerous. It's dangerous talk. I'm not going to entertain that kind of dangerous talk, putting people's lives at risk like that, being encouraged not to do something that is just basic public health protection. And really the mission is just is to just limit the amount of people getting sick out there. All right, that wraps this Monday edition of Reality Check. We move into The Source with rapping professor Dr. Aaron Smith. That's coming up next on WURD. So continue to listen in. I will be back tomorrow. We could definitely have this conversation tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 a.m. sharp, God willing. And continue to go to twitter.com @EllisonReport, #RealityCheck for more of that social media conversation. I want to thank Troy Wilmore at the back end on the board of steel, getting all this done, keeping the radio trains running on time. Philly, please stay smart, stay sharp. More importantly, please stay safe and cool out there. Things are not safe in Philly. So it's please, folks are going to have to stay safe. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Got to come up with a plan for that. Got to come up with a better plan, because the plans that are out there right now aren't working. In the meantime, everyone stay safe and have a great rest of your afternoon, great evening. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care.